This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remus.
Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Patterson back in the host chair. Shout out to Remo for holding it down, doing a hell of a job over the last 3 days when I was down in Vegas enjoying the Super Bowl win by my Chiefs. Parade today. Much celebrations in KC. If only I had made a plan to hit KC on the way back from Vegas. That would have been truly great planning. That being said, happy to be here, happy to be back, despite it being a little cold just in time for my return. But I did get back just in time to see my true love last night on Valentine's Day. The Winnipeg Jets get a big win last night in a shootout. Fun night at the rink. We'll get to that. And we've got some great stuff to chop up today. Obviously, CFL free agency continuing. Bombers somewhat quiet after the big announcement yesterday, making it official that Kenny Lawler is coming back to the blue and gold. Darren Bombing of Bonfire Sports will come on. We'll get DB's takes on how the Bombers are looking right now, what still needs to be done for Kyle Walters, as well as some of the big moves around the league. And then more Jets talk with our good friend Murat Atesh of The Athletic. Trade deadline coming up in early March. We'll hit that. The latest on Murat's thoughts on what the Jets may be looking at. And, of course, we'll talk about the game and look ahead to this big road trip, which will take them to Columbus and out to New York City coming up next week. And it's curling season now, folks. I know often many of you, like myself, are not grinding on the curling scene day to day for the first few months of the year, but the Scotties and the Brier are back, and Matt Dunstone, what a season he's had coming back to officially play for Manitoba, winning the Manitoba Championship last week. He will join us later on in the program today. So a great show for you. Welcome to everyone with us on YouTube right now. Great to see you all. If you haven't, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and check out the podcast as well. Wherever you get podcasts, search Winnipeg Sports Talk and subscribe to the audio feed. And, of course, for folks that are listening on the pod, thanks so much for making us a part of your day. When you have the opportunity, get on over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel and see what we do with the full video content that the CTO puts together every day when we get going. Huge thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day, led by our friends at Cool Bet Canada. New lock shop out today, hitting the Genesis Open, and tomorrow we'll have a big Scotties preview for you curling fans. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we'll get to a why not question of the day a little bit later on for our friends at Not Auto Corp. Michael Remus, what's going on? And great job again for holding it down while I got away for a few days. How are you?
Yeah, it was fun, but great to have you back. Nice to have someone to converse back and forth here. And yeah, it wasn't the same, but I was happy to do my part in making sure the building didn't burn down. So it was good. Thankfully, Huss, you picked a good weekend to go away. We had a lot to get to on Friday with the Super Bowl coming up and the Jets returning, and then recapping the Super Bowl, talking to Jets. Oh yeah, and CFL free agency, no shortage. So it's been fun here actually the last couple of days.
I see Kenny's water bottle. As an Eagles fan, Huss's sweater might be the ugliest, most disgusting thing I've ever set my eyes on. I know it was Red Friday every day last week. I mixed up my Chiefs stuff going into the Super Bowl. I'll probably cut down on it more now, but hey, it's parade day, my first day back after the win. You knew I was going to drop the Kingdom shirt on everyone. And I will say this, looking forward to, we'll talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl just at the end of the show because I know probably plenty of oxygen has been spent on that. It's a couple days away. We'll get to some highlights of the parade. But let's get right to it, Remo. Jets back on home ice last night, taking on the Seattle Kraken on a Valentine's Day special. Pretty good game for the Winnipeg Jets. Credit to the Kraken. This is not a team that I've watched a lot of. I have sort of wondered from afar how they've done what they've done so far this year. And I guess I was asking myself that a few times last night because the Jets really did seem to be taking it to the Kraken quite a bit, but there we were in the third period with the Jets down 2-1, needing a big goal from Pierre-Luc Dubois to get it to overtime. Nothing settled. And then a pretty fun shootout. Big saves by Big Save Dave himself. And PLD with the winner last night. The Jets get a big 2 points, 3 in a row, looking to start off their road trip. Maybe with a little payback for the Columbus Blue Jackets, considering what happened here in Winnipeg in the lone meeting between the clubs earlier this year.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a good game. Two teams currently in the playoffs. Seattle's been, they had coming in, they had won one, but they had lost 3 in a row before that. So they're a good team, and they really go with the balanced attack. Don't really have that one, superstar point scorer who's above everyone. Solid game, but kind of a weird game. I thought the Jets were playing well, and they were outplaying Seattle. But you have Dubois take that penalty, and Seattle goes on the power play, and the second goal for Seattle, one of the most bizarre goals I've seen, where it goes off, Plinko's off 2 Jets skates, one, and then it goes into the slot, and then in the back of the net. No chance for Dave Riddick there, who got the start after Hellbuck was ill and morning skate, and he is traveling with the team. We'll get to the skate later, but just on last night. And it's funny how as Dubois takes the penalty and Seattle scores a double. I call it a double doink goal on Twitter. Then Dubois, after a faceoff win, he gets the puck in front and he's trying to pass it to someone else for a backdoor, bounces off the defenseman's skate and in. So another doink goal and in to tie the game. Halfway through the third period. So I thought it was a very entertaining game. Overtime was great, but we would have liked to see a goal. We did not. And it was the first shootout for the Jets this season. And they came up with a win. And it was Dubois again with the win. So we're making an impact there.
I mean, we've talked about this I know it's in vogue for people to say the shootout sucks. As someone that buys tickets that goes to games, I sure as hell didn't want to leave with the tie last night. And it really is a fun, exciting way to end a regular season game, especially when both teams are guaranteed the point. And, we sort of saw that in the last 90 seconds or so. Both teams, considering where they are, wanted to make sure they got the single and then play for the bonus point in OT. And that was what had happened. But again, we can talk about the goals that went in, and obviously PLD with the winner. But this was another big game for Big Save Dave. I kind of have to laugh, Remo. The last 2 years, we've had massive freakouts amongst part of the fan base about the backup goaltending position at the beginning of the year. And as the year has played out, last year, Eric Comrie doing an incredible job. And this year, I think Big Save Dave, you have to say that he's exceeded just about everyone's expectations about what he's brought to the Winnipeg Jets. And it's a big reason why the Jets are where they are right now is the record that they have with Connor Hellebuyck not in the net. And another big win for Dave last night.
Yeah, it seems like, when he was signed, I agree, there was similar freakouts. Even with every backup the last couple of years, I was thinking about it this morning while having breakfast. This is what I think about while I'm having breakfast. That's the Jets' backup goalie history. Laurent Brossoit, he's really big unknown, and parlayed that into a nice contract with Vegas. And then Eric Comrie parlayed that into a contract with Buffalo, and they brought in Dave Riddick, a $900,000 contract. He had some success in the league before, but it just hadn't gone well the last couple of years. And I don't know what's in the goaltending water here, Huss and Winnipeg, but the backups come in and they play well. I know he got off to a really rough start, Huss. Remember that first game in Vegas?
Yeah,
where
the
Jets
first period in Vegas was an absolute disaster.
So here I tallied the numbers, Huss. Since that first game, these are his numbers. 9-3-0, 238 goals against, 914 save percentage. Incredible results here for a guy who's on $900,000 contract. Your team, trying to have all this cap space. We're going to see what they do with it, if anything, as we approach the deadline. But the results here have been incredible. I think his save percentage, I tweeted it out actually, where he ranks with those numbers among all goalies who've played more than 400 minutes. His goals against, 238, ranks 10th, and his save percentage ranks 19th. So I think that's pretty good for your second
number
goalie.
2.
Yeah, 9-3-2, and he's got I think he's got a 4-game win streak now. I have it in the notes. Let me just bring. bring it up here.
And I mean, just looking at season over, I mean, obviously that didn't include that first Vegas game, but even with a four goals against in the first period of the season for Dave, he's at 2.52 goals against average for the year and a .911 save percentage. He's been everything the team could have asked and more. And the other fun thing, Remo, when you're at the games is just the fact that, obviously Big Save Dave is the nickname, but it's just shortened to Dave. And Dave continues to give the Jets real quality backup goaltending. And, an interesting situation yesterday. It wasn't like it was planned for him to go into the net. You mentioned that Connor Hellebuyck wasn't feeling well earlier on at the morning skate. Plans changed, and Dave went in and delivered another good performance for the Winnipeg Jets last night with 29 saves and a couple big ones in the shootout. So here we are now. Jets hitting the road and looking pretty darn good in the standings right now, Reem. And, again, we spent a lot of time during the off week talking about the effect of that comeback win against St. Louis in the Josh Morrissey game. They've now won 3 in a row, have the opportunity to make it 4 in a row, and a little payback against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and really get some momentum heading into 3 in 4 days in a real busy schedule, taking on the New Jersey Devils, the New York Rangers, and the New York Islanders next week. Going to be a fun trip, but great opportunity to make it 4 in a row on Thursday against Seabus.
Yeah, I think that's a good opponent to start off the road trip. And first, we've been talking about this all week, Huss, how the break, some teams, we were talking with Rob Simpson yesterday, he said for the Kraken, kind of stopped all their momentum. They had that big road win streak. You take a break, everyone departs, and then they started on the road. I think it was beneficial for the Jets to end before the break at home and then come back home. So you're not, you get a bit of a recharge from your trip. And I think you could see the benefits against Chicago. I know it's Chicago, but hey, you can only play the games that they put in front of you. And I thought Seattle, for the most part of the game, they looked pretty strong. They were outshot them. You would have liked to see a goal on one of those power plays, but didn't. And they had a nice comeback and were able to get the 2 points. So, Columbus, we know they're one of the bottom teams in the league, and you kind of got to ramp. It starts on what? It starts on easy mode with Columbus, and then it gets, medium against New Jersey, pretty good. And the Rangers are super, super hot right now, especially after acquiring Tarasenko. Watch out for them. And so then it gets hard. So you kind of get to ramp up, and then you return home for February 24. You couldn't see the digital ads while you were at the game, but they
another great reason to go to the games, Reem, as you well know.
They keep hyping up Makar versus Morrissey, February 24. I've never seen man-on-man marketing for a hockey game, but they did it earlier
this year for the Tampa game.
Yeah, they did.
Hellebuyck versus Vasilevsky.
And Vasilevsky didn't play, so maybe they'll have luck in Makar.
Yeah, Vasilevsky didn't want any of that smoke.
Yeah, he didn't want a part of it. So you missed all those promotion though while you were at the game. It was only for us on TV.
I did watch. I made it into a casino sports book on Saturday night to watch the Jets Chicago game, and I guess they had the regular Sportsnet feed. By the way, that seemed like a really, really fun game. That was the one thing that I really regretted going away for the weekend, was not being in that game, just to see what the crowd was going to be like. Extra lit with the 9 p.m. start. From all accounts, everything they did for the South Asian Heritage Night was a huge, huge hit. Obviously, the home team won. Looked pretty good on TV, but it would have been good to be there. And last night as well. I mean, it was a little sleepy at times earlier on, but I thought that the way the Winnipeg Jets played, and maybe the play last night that got the crowd into it the most, Reem, was not something that shows up on the scoreboard. But credit where credit is due to the Jets penalty killing unit. 6 minutes in PK time in the first period that they killed. And the best moment of maybe the entire game outside of the goals was Adam Lowry killing a penalty without a stick. Brendan Dillon had broken his stick. Adam Lowry gave Dillon his stick and popped out the leather. 2 beautiful kick saves without a stick last night. Just another example of what Adam Lowry does for the Winnipeg Jets. And he said afterwards that, when he was younger, he was thought maybe he had what it took to be a great goalie. He obviously went a different direction, and that's paid off in the National Hockey League. But he still, I guess if If the Jets needed an e-bug, we know where they're going to after those 2 kick saves by Lowry last night.
And giving me flashbacks to Eric Tangradi on that shift where he blocked with 4 shots.
That's the most legendary PK shift in Winnipeg Jet history. Tango.
Yeah. And this one, he didn't have a stick. And, normally I'm like, if you don't have a stick, I always wonder if it's more beneficial just to go and get one. But you give any NHL player just a split-second opening, they can take advantage. They're that good. So Adam Lowry using his goalie instincts, and he was really tossing out the leg. Those were legit kick saves. It was pretty incredible what a guy can do when you don't have to worry about your stick. Maybe just kill a penalty with no stick every time, right? That was the one they didn't score on when everyone had sticks. They scored on the power play, Huss. So I don't know. Maybe we've identified a trend here. Just on the 9 p.m. game, I said here Monday show, they should have once every year a special 9 p.m. game, home game. You get national TV, and you get the focus on you. I'm here for that. So if it's Super Bowl weekend, 9 p.m. start, let's do that.
Hey, you know who else I think would be all in favor of that would be all the downtown businesses. I'm sure, and I'm assuming this to be the case, but from all accounts, people took advantage of those extra hours before the game to get a few in them, maybe have dinner somewhere beforehand. And listen, to be able to have an extra 2 hours or 3 hours of pre-game sales, great for everyone. Now, obviously, that's not a time that regularly you could consistently have games.
No, but if you did it once.
Well, for sure. And let's face it, come playoff time, depending on what the matchups are, we've seen the Winnipeg Jets before have to play home games at 8:30 p.m. due to TV, and I wouldn't rule that out. Bottom line is, though, speaking of playoffs, Reem, I just got my action-required email from the Jets on my season tickets for next year and the playoffs. And I haven't wanted to think playoffs too much. It's such a long season. But as we look at the Jets heading out onto this road trip, 54 games in the books, 69 wins, 15 games above 500, and just 2 points back of the Dallas Stars with a game in hand, and 8 points clear of the Colorado Avalanche, who now only have 2 games in hand. So I think we can start making plans for playoff games and the whiteout here in Winnipeg. It's going to be a fun run, first of all, to the trade deadline and see the way this team looks come the 4th of March. But the bottom line is they have really turned things around from a rough spot heading into the break. Josh Morrissey being the catalyst of that game against St. Louis, and did what they had to do to get 2 points in their first games coming out.
Yeah, there was all there's been a couple times we've had these losing streaks where are the Jets not for real? Is the season going to fall apart here like it did in the second half of 2019? And they had that win against St. Louis where it was looking, it was pretty quiet in the building until Josh Morrissey scored and fired everyone up, continued it after the break. And I really do think that I've said this so many times how beneficial it was. You could tell they were running out of gas, and it's definitely benefited a guy like Blake Wheeler, who's got goals in consecutive games. He had 2 on Saturday, and just a really nice one after a pass by Nikolai Ehlers. Wheeler out in front. Just how he maneuvered his body. It looked like he did, between the legs, but it was not. It was just a quick pivot where he's able to make the goalie move and put it in the back of the net. So, gotta like what you've seen so far from the Jets in 2 games. I know it's not it's not, who have you beat? But this is who they scheduled. They won. Move on.
Yeah, well, and people might be able to say that again after the game on Thursday against Columbus. If the Jets win, no one in the dressing room of the organization is going to care. Get the 2 points, move on. And as you kind of laid out, some good tests going to NYC with the Devils and Rangers in back-to-back nights. Both of those teams poised to be playoff teams. And, we haven't talked a lot about Jersey this year, and we will, I'm sure, as we get closer to the game. We've talked a lot about the job that Rick Bowness has done here in Winnipeg. Lindy Ruff done a hell of a job in Jersey. And I just think back about the first week of the season when they started 0-3, and the chants in Jersey were fire Lindy. And then a month later, the chants were sorry Lindy, apologizing after they'd won 13 or 14 in a row. But yeah, the Jets start off with that game against the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday, then a couple days off, and then 3-4 beginning on Sunday against the New Jersey Devils. Couple other things coming out of the game last night. And listen, I know where you're going to go with on this. Everyone's talking about Josh Morrissey tying the franchise record for points by a defenseman with 56. Ties Buff in 13-14. Like, hello, Phil Housley, 79 assists in 92-93. Like, for all the things, if we want to talk about franchise records, and I know we've got these Thrasher numbers in, certainly I recognize Winnipeg Jets records. Phil Housley, 92-93, still has set the bar, which could be a long time before it's touched. But that doesn't take anything away from the brilliant season that Josh Morrissey's having.
Yeah, I wasn't as annoyed hearing about it yesterday. Overall, I think the whole situation is really stupid. That there's a team called the Winnipeg Jets, and there's another team called the Arizona Coyotes, and the Coyotes have the Jets 1.0 records. It doesn't make any sense to me, but we've kind of beat that a lot. I'm really happy for Josh. Bottom line is you're happy for Josh Morrissey, the season he's having, first time All-Star. He's been in the league, it was 7th season, and all these guys did actually play in Winnipeg, so I'm fine with this situation. Defenseman assist season, single season, Morrissey setting the record, 45. Enstrom did have 44 with the Thrashers, 09-10. Trouba 42, 18-19. Bufflin 41. And Enstrom 41. Bufflin, that was 11-12. So, I think you're just happy for Morrissey, but I do think, we got to find a way to do Winnipeg hockey records and Winnipeg, because the way that they're doing it doesn't make sense. It's a disservice to the fans, but I am happy for Morrissey. But I think we do have to talk about this because, I think it annoys people, and I know TSN Stats Center does a really good job of putting up Winnipeg hockey history.
Yeah,
records.
if someone goes and scores 65 goals as a rookie, are we going to say that's the record? We're just going to forget about Solani scoring 76 goals? I won't. Most people won't either. So, but anyways, listen, the fact that Morrissey's even in that conversation with Housley speaks to the amazing season that he's had. Another point last night. He just continues to make things happen. And the one other thing, we'll get to practice in just a second, Reem. Man, the Jets have been good at home this year. And it's funny, they're 20 and 8 right now on home ice. And I'm kind of thinking, I missed the Philly game. I missed the my record right now this year is 19-3 or something like that, being in the seats for the games. The times that I have missed games have actually been the few times that they've lost. But listen, if you've been going to games a lot this year, you've seen some great hockey, and perfect timing for the Jets to get that 20th win, sending out invoices for season tickets and renewals, and obviously getting people hyped up for the playoffs as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, start planning, because it seems like they're going to be in, and try to see if they can pass Dallas. I don't know. People in chat right now are like, does Dallas go overtime every single game? They keep getting these damn loser points. It was Boston beating them in overtime last night. So I think it's going to be a race here to the end. It's unfortunate the Jets don't actually play Dallas. They only play them 3 times, and they've already had them all. So we'll have to see how it goes. And the Jets, 2 points behind Dallas with a game in hand. So they're certainly on a similar pace.
Quickly, we do have an injury to report. A member of the Jets won't be making the trip, and strangely enough, it's not a player, Reem.
Yeah, upper body injury for Brad Lauer, head coach. They did say herniated disc. I was shocked they revealed that information. You don't know how the opponent, what they're going to do to target it, Hustler.
Target an injured coach?
Yeah, I don't know, man. You don't know. Well, you never know. Teams will do whatever they need to do to take advantage. And just as far as the lines go, Nate Schmidt, he didn't practice, but he'll be fine. Hellebuck, he skated too. He's going to go on the trip. They called up Arvid Holm. The interesting part about this is that Eric Dubois will help now that Brad Lauer is out with an injury, and he's going to travel on the road. And this is, I don't know if you knew this isn't the first time that a player's dad has been on the Jets coaching staff. We experienced last year, and we remember hearing Adam Lowry talk about his relationship with Dave and how it changed when Dave became the head coach. I did have, some concerns, being like, didn't we already do this with the player's dad on the coaching staff? But I'm sure that they discussed this with Pierre-Luc and they've gone over all the scenarios. Or I don't know, or it's a thing where you're like, Pierre, your dad's going to come
He's going to be assisting the guys. So it's not going to be like being the head knock like Dave Lowry was. And by the way, Dave Lowry got a nice warm welcome to Canada Life Center last night by the fans in the organization.
Yes. Tribute video
timeout last night. We'll talk more about this a little later on. There was no big tribute video. There was not a lot of rehashing the glory or lack thereof.
That is nice.
During Dave's time.
That is
and he's
nice
doing well with this new club. Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll talk more Jets with Murat coming up a little bit later on. We're going to get to some CFL talk, though, with our guy Darren Bombing coming up in just a second. Before we do that, chilly again today, folks. And if you're in need of a battery for your car, your truck, or even that summer toy you're working on this winter, Manitoba Battery wants you to know they're the most convenient and well-priced option in the city. How convenient, you ask? We'll put in that order at lunchtime today and have it sitting on your doorstep in 2 to 4 hours for less money than you would spend anywhere else in Winnipeg on the same battery. It's that simple. Let me repeat. Order a battery today before 1:30 p.m. and have it on your doorstep anywhere in the city by the end of the workday. Basically, the Amazon of batteries here in Winnipeg, but shopping local. No fighting for a parking spot at Costco. No waiting in line at Canadian Tire. No spending more money on a battery at the big box stores. Just let Manitoba Battery bring the battery to you while you spend time on more important things. 2 minutes, either make the phone call or order online at manitobabattery.com. Let Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery simplify your life. Our friends at Consolidated Supply looking ahead to spring, summer, snow leaving. Of course, some incredible landscaping, irrigation, artificial turf options is the leader in that side of things in the golf industry for decades here in Manitoba. Also, the club car dealer. And if you're thinking on a great project for maybe the backyard or expanding the fun space of your home, think about a spa or a hot tub or maybe a beautiful outdoor kitchen. They've got it all. Consolidated Supply. Give Spicy Joe, the gang, a call or pop down and see him. 1395 Niagara Road East, or check out their relaunched website now with everything Consolidated Supply has going on at cte.ca. Don't forget, folks, the Unsung Hero program with Wallace and Wallace and Josh Morrissey continues. Send us emails of nominations for that person in your community, spending time, hours, and more making other people's lives better, whether it be through charitable work, volunteering in minor sports, the school system, charity, the healthcare. You let us know. Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. Our Unsung Hero for the month will receive an autographed jersey from Josh Morrissey. Wallace and Wallace will donate $500 in the nominator's name to the Dream Factory, and Josh and Margot Morrissey will match that $500 so everybody wins. Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com is where you want to get that out. And hey, a big shout out to our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market. If you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, pop by any one of 7 Vita Health Fresh Market stores or online at myvita.ca. You'll be supporting a great local company, family-owned and operated since 1936, with Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too. And don't forget, folks, February is Heart Month. It's crucial to support this vital organ with omega-3 fatty acids. We can't always get enough in our diet, so supplement with RX3 omega-3 fish oil by Natural Factors. It helps support cardiovascular health and cognitive function, eye health, joint pain, and flexibility. On sale today at Vita Health, 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. All right, let's get Bombing in here. It's been a minute since we've had DB on. He's been busy covering CFL free agency for Bonfire Sports the last couple days. Darren Bombing, how are you, my friend? Great to have you back on WST.
It's good to be with you, man. What a day it was yesterday.
Big time. You know, I was traveling all day, and I got on an early flight. I had a little bit of time on my layover, and man, my head was spinning just trying to keep track of everything happening around the league. I guess the big thing, though, is we start off with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You could tell me if you were at all surprised it was a little quieter. It almost seemed like this is the way it was going to be and has been the last couple of years. Kyle Walters doing all his work before free agency. And we knew last week of the big fish, Kenny Lawler, coming back, and that was made official yesterday, and we heard from Kenny Lawler. Just thoughts on the Bombers. First of all, Lawler coming back and where the Bombers sit right now after day one of free agency.
Yeah, not a lot of work to do for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because everybody was essentially back, right? Dalton Schoen paired with Kenny Lawler, like you could argue those are the two best, most productive receivers in the CFL over the last 2 years, with Lawler being just an absolute beast. And then, of course, the rookie phenom that was Dalton Schoen and not signing an NFL contract. Now, it's a cliche, but I'll throw it out there. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I thought maybe they were going to make some changes on the offensive line. They did. Yeah, Michael Couture, their starting center, moves on, goes back home to BC, and they're going to go with Tui Eli, player that wasn't around last year. Chris Kolankowski stepped up really well, but those big veterans are back, right? Jeff Gray still under contract, Pat Neufeld, Jamarcus Hardrick, Stanley Bryant, a lot of Hall of Fame caliber careers and talent in there. No, the offensive line isn't a sexy conversation to have. People aren't talking about, these guys, making an impact on a week-to-week basis. But this is how you build good football teams at the line of scrimmage. Kyle Walters knows it. The best GMs in the CFL and in the NFL know it. So getting those guys back on the other side of the ball, Jefferson, Jeffcoat, Adam Bighill, those were huge retentions for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So the fact that they got maybe the biggest, sexiest fish in the pond in free agency by getting Kenny Lawler to come back after a year with Edmonton, I don't know if Winnipeg could have had a better free agency despite it being relatively quiet.
Well, exactly. And I think the price as well. I mean, Kenny Lawler comes back, first year $265, second year $300. And you would think that, there'll be a nice playoff check at some point, depending on how far the Bombers go as well. And then Geno Lewis topping that with, I think, $320 in Edmonton a little earlier on. We'll get to the rest of the league in a second. But Casey Sayles, and I know you tweeted this out, this is the guy that was a very impactful player. He's gone. He's getting some big money out east. How do they replace Casey Sayles, and how big of a hole do you think that leaves, Darren?
It's a hole. Absolutely. Casey Sayles, a bit unheralded on a star-studded defense when you talk about, those guys on the defensive front that I just mentioned. All of those jerseys are in the crowd. There wasn't a lot of Casey Sayles jerseys. The reality that it is for a defensive tackle in the CFL. But he was incredibly productive. Look at the numbers and understand that an interior defensive lineman like Casey Sayles isn't going to get the tackles for loss, the sacks, the knockdowns that edge defenders on the D-line like Jeffcoat and Jefferson are going to get. The reason those guys, the Jeffs, have been so effective is because of the work Casey Sayles was doing on the inside. For a defensive tackle, the numbers were outstanding. There's a reason why the Hamilton Tiger Cats, it wasn't just him. They brought in a lot of talent on the defensive front, and Sayles is getting $200,000 a year, which is a huge sum of money for a defensive tackle, but probably deservedly so. As far as replacing him, this is where I'm kind of saying, I'm telling fans, rest a little bit on the laurels that is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers brass, scouting staff, and management. They found Brandon Bryant at defensive tackle. He then went to the NFL. They found Casey Sayles, and obviously he has been outstanding there as well. They found defensive tackle after defensive tackle over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So I'm sure Winnipeg, because they're spending those big tickets on a lot of those stars, including Kenny Lawler and some of those guys that are back on new contracts like Nick Dembski and the highest paid quarterback in the league, rightfully so, in Zach Collaros, you maybe have to find a bit of a discount or a bargain at some positions. I think defensive tackle is a spot Winnipeg has a lot of confidence that they can replace.
We know that Zach Collaros is the guy going forward at quarterback. What's that quarterback room going to look like once we get, and how many new faces do you think might be around at training camp?
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to bring in a couple guys, right? They have to. That's the reality of pro football. You got to bring in that next crop and see if you can find that next star quarterback in the CFL. Of course, Zach Collaros signing a 3-year contract extension at the end of the season following the Grey Cup loss. That's locked down real tight for a long, long time. Drew Brown signed a contract extension in 2021, so he is under contract for this coming year. I think he is a legit CFL starting talent and will start games in the CFL in his future. If it's in Winnipeg, great. If it's somewhere else, that might be the reality as well. Dakota Prukop, I had people calling me crazy, Hustler, in training camp last year. Dakota Prukop, they're going to use him like Chris Streveler. People are saying, Bombing, you're saying that Dakota Prukop, this journeyman veteran CFL backup, is going to be Chris Streveler? No, they're going to use him like Chris Streveler. And what did we see? Nearly 100% picking up first downs in short yardage situations, had 6 touchdowns rushing last year, threw for a couple. Yeah, he also threw for a couple interceptions. I don't know what was going on in the Grey Cup, but those 2 picks, definitely costly. You could talk play calling, Prukop's play himself, whatever. The reality is he was incredibly effective and dangerous with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He's going to the USFL. So now we have to remember there's a lot of veterans. Like one of the biggest linebackers out there, Darnell Sankey, is going to sign in the XFL, I believe. There's the USFL, the XFL. All of those are options now for a lot of these impact players in the CFL. So for the Blue Bombers, maybe you find a quarterback that is ready to come up here and try to get a bigger role in Canada instead of going to those American routes.
Well, speaking of Sankey, Dusty and I were doing the lock shop earlier today and touched on this quickly, and he sort of brought up just how surprising it was that, a guy that probably would be looking at, in the neighborhood of $200,000 as one of the top linebackers in the entire CFL is going to the XFL, where I believe most of the players are making around $65,000. I mean, do you think this is just an opportunity for him to maybe quicker get looks at the National Football League and get that opportunity at 28 years old that probably won't be there if it doesn't happen this year? Because I don't think you can make the argument that he's leaving money on the table playing in that league as opposed to what would be available to him right now in the CFL.
No question that the appeal of the XFL and the USFL is more eyes on those players from NFL teams, right? So players want to play close to home. They want to be close to their partner, their kids, their life, their family, maybe their off-season job, those sorts of things. Paying rent up in Canada, it's another piece of rent you got to pay. So I think there's a lot of appeal to go to those American leagues. The other thing we have to keep in mind is the XFL and the USFL, well, they're played in the spring. So by the time those schedules are complete, those guys have that $65,000, American dollars, mind you, not the 65 league minimum. Not saying those guys are league minimum, but that's Canadian dollars versus American dollars. So make it 1.3 to every Canadian dollar they could be making. And if they really want to, they can play that 10-game schedule in the USFL or in the XFL, essentially half a CFL season, and then come north and sign another contract in the CFL. Are they going to be making top end dollar after playing in the XFL or the USFL? I would say no, because a lot of that money has already been spent. But if they are a known commodity, a proven producer and performer in the Canadian Football League, there is a team that is going to throw some cash their way to help bolster their team, especially if there's an injury in training camp or early in the season, that some of these guys might want that opportunity to, put their body through. Believe it or not, 25, you start going playoffs, 30 games in a season for a football player. It's a lot.
Darren Bombing of Bonfire Sports breaking down CFL free agency with us. Bombers still clearly the team to beat in the West, but a couple teams are going to look significantly different. Saskatchewan, obviously, we knew that Fajardo's now is in Montreal. Trevor Harris signs. Jake Weineke signs. And there was a lot of doom and gloom around Saskatchewan over the course of this offseason. It hasn't been smooth sailing. Huge pressure going in. I know we're just one day in, but have the Riders done enough, Darren, do you think, to turn around their fortunes and at least be a playoff team this year in the CFL?
Well, we know the biggest issue in Saskatchewan was the offensive line. Signing Philip Blake, a Canadian that can effectively play all 5 positions on that offensive front, that's a nice thing. Their general manager, Jeremy O'Day, stated, I believe it was today, that Dan Clark, their veteran, unbelievable all-world type talent offensive lineman, is probably not going to be on the roster to begin the season. But, moving on from Cody Fajardo to Trevor Harris, bringing in Jake Weineke, bringing in Micah Johnson for a third go-around with the Rough Riders on the defensive side of the ball, adding Juwan Brescason to the receiving core with Weineke, to some of the guys that they already have there. Yeah, they lost Shaq Evans and Duke Williams, but I don't think those are going to be huge hits with Weineke, stepping in there and some of the younger guys that they have. Kieran Moore moving on as well from Saskatchewan, but they've got great running back talent in Saskatchewan. I think they're going to throw everything they can at the wall this year because it is Craig Dickinson and Jeremy O'Day's final year of their contracts. They either are a playoff team or it is going to be a down to the studs overhaul in Saskatchewan. Did they do enough yesterday? Well, of course, we won't know until maybe around Labor Day when we're talking the Classic and the Banjo Bowl, between the two prairie rivals to see if Saskatchewan's actually got their, what together.
Obviously, I mean, we're talking a lot about the receiving core of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and when it became apparent Dalton Schoen wasn't getting an NFL deal, I think that really allowed them to focus in on Kenny Lawler because of the value they're getting of that rookie contract for Dalton Schoen. Made that happen. There were some other big receivers on the market, and it seemed like Chris Jones got them to come to Northern Alberta to give Taylor Cornelius a legitimate shot to succeed as the Elks QB, starting off with Geno Lewis, who now by my count is going to be the highest paid receiver in the game. What do you think about what Edmonton's done after that miserable season, still waiting for a home win for the first time since the pandemic?
Yeah, I think one of their last home games, Hustler Commonwealth, they had like a guarantee. If you bought a premium ticket to that home game late in the season, it was either win or you get another ticket for free in the future. So I think some people are riding free season tickets right now, as long as, Edmonton isn't able to get W's at home. But I expect that to change in 2023. Chris Jones has turned around a lot of franchises. It was Edmonton years ago as their defensive coordinator, really turned them into a contender, winning the Grey Cup at IG Field in 2015, turning Saskatchewan around, making them a very dangerous team. Obviously, time down south before coming back up to Edmonton to run things. But Geno Lewis, there's a reason he was the most outstanding player nominee from the East Division last year. In my eyes, he has been the best offensive player, non-quarterback, in the CFL, arguably for a long time. He is so impactful, so clutch, great signing, albeit expensive at $230,000 a season with Edmonton. But you add in Stephen Dunbar Jr. from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Kieran Moore, the man they call Swerve, a really shifty, athletic, speedy guy from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Edmonton has a lot of weapons around Taylor Cornelius. The question is, how much more time does Taylor Cornelius have? How long is that leash? He has a long way to go. He is a legit dual threat quarterback, big body. He can run, has a cannon of an arm. But if the accuracy isn't there, I just don't know if Swerve and Geno and Dunbar Jr. and then the rest that they have is going to make a difference. He needs to be a lot more efficient with the football.
Another quiet day of free agency for the Calgary Stampeders. And it seems like that is not any different than, the last few years. And part of it is that Calgary's been so good at creating their own players and building from within. But I thought maybe they'd be a little bit busier this year. And there is some questions as to, how loose the purse strings are in Calgary right now. I mean, what are you hearing about the Stamp situation right now? They've been one of the most consistent franchises, but did seem to take a step back last year. And now, of course, they're looking to reload at some point, but it does seem like they are going to lean on their scouts as much as any team in the CFL.
Yeah, no question. And they've been able to produce talent with that scouting staff led by John Hufnagel for a long, long time. We have to remember this past offseason, John Hufnagel passed the general manager reins on to his head coach. He'll now have dual roles in Dave Dickenson. So this is the first free agent period for Dave Dickenson. And the fact that not a lot of work has been done might be because not a lot of work needed to be done. You lose someone like Flo Orlamade, unbelievably talented and impactful, maybe the most impactful defensive lineman in the CFL last season. You lose him to Toronto. He signs a nice big ticket to join the defending Grey Cup champs. Sorry to remind everybody out there. But they replace it with a very good player and versatile one in Julian Hauser from the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So I think, big question marks going into the season. You lose Jameer Thurman, who may be looking at the he signed with Hamilton. You lose a couple other players, but there are two teams in the CFL that I look at with almost blind trust as far as they'll probably find somebody and produce a starter out of training camp. It's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and it's the Calgary Stampeders. Last year, tons of change in the defensive backfield. They were bringing in new starters and trying new guys there all the time. They found some nice diamonds in the rough. I think some of those other positions, receiver and the defensive line is and linebackers is where the Calgary Stampeders are probably going to hope that they can find some guys in camp and produce. But it's been 2 years of a lot of change in Calgary. We'll see how they perform once the games start mattering for real. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
I bumped in and had a real nice chat last week with Andrew Harris. And, I was sort of like, so man, like, what's up? What are you going to be playing? And he was pretty coy, but it was clear that, he still thinks that, he's got something left to give. And it's obvious that the impact that he made within that Argonaut organization was similar, I think, to, the effect that he had when he first came here from BC with that winning mentality, 3 straight Grey Cup rings, and he's back again for another year. I mean, just what an incredible career, what an incredible athlete. But one of the other things we did talk about was how different that team might look next year, especially at the quarterback position. And by all accounts, it sounds like MBT is probably not going to be playing. I believe he's in a financial situation where it certainly isn't incumbent on him to be back. Obviously finished off with the championship. And then Swag Kelly, is he the guy going forward? I mean, he's got all the talent, but there have been many that have referred to him before he got to the Canadian Football League as $1 million talent, 10-cent head. I do wonder if he's got the maturity right now to be that leader of the club. And from the sounds of it, Brian Dinwiddie will give him the opportunity to earn it, but he won't be anointed the guy before he does what it takes to be the guy, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. All world talent is bang on. $1 million talent, however you want to put it. Chad Kelly has all of the tools in a football capacity to be an impact quarterback in professional football. And you could even almost argue in the National Football League if he's able to bring it all together. We have to remember these guys are young guys. I made a lot of mistakes when I was in college hustler. I'm sure, everybody can say that in one respect or another. So, is Chad Kelly the answer in Toronto? What's up with McLeod Bethel Thompson, some of those American USFL and XFL options? I know he's a bit older, but a guy that, hung around in the NFL for the better part of a decade before, settling as a starter in the CFL. That happened for a reason. American scouts really like what McLeod Bethel Thompson has. So is he a guy that can come in and teach and start right away for one of those American leagues? That's a possibility. I think Chad Kelly's opportunity to turn his football life around is now. He is on a championship team with a win now mentality, good coaching, good general manager management as well, and a very talented team around him that spent a little bit in free agency. I would like to see Chad Kelly succeed. I really, really would. Will we? That could be the biggest wild card in the CFL in 2023. But, we'll have to see if Toronto brings in a lot of talent and options around him. I think he's the type of guy, especially now where you could just hand him the reins. I think it's important to have some competition in camp for him.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, the guy's a gamer. We all know that. I mean, we saw, unfortunately, how it turned out for the Bombers, and he was a big part of that, when MBT was out in the fourth quarter of the Grey Cup game. As far as the rest of the East, Montreal's fascinating. They've got the ownership issues right now, where the league sort of, they brought back their old president to hold things down, but they are making moves right now, and Cody Fajardo looks like he's going to get a second lease on his CFL playing career in Montreal with the Alouettes.
Yeah, they did a lot of work and kind of sneaky good work, the Montreal Alouettes did. We'll talk about Jason Moss and Cody Fajardo rejoining in a second, but I do want to mention, getting a player like Jumal Roll, big, long defensive back to help bolster that secondary. Walter Fletcher at running back. Of course, Greg Ellingson, who was leading the CFL in receiving through the first, third of the season. I shared a quick message with him yesterday and, wished him the best. And he said, man, I'm going to miss playing with Zach Collaros, but, we'll see what he can do with Cody Fajardo in Montreal. He's a real impact player when healthy. But this is what really fascinates me, Hustler, is that there was this dialogue going on in Saskatchewan that Cody Fajardo, the quarterback, and Jason Moss, the quarterback-minded offensive coordinator, that they had a strange relationship. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I don't have any firsthand knowledge in that. What I do know is that the football marriage maybe wasn't a good fit. You could see Jason Moss, and in conversations I had with people a lot smarter than me that watch the games at a completely different level than the rest of us, say, Jason Moss, they were telling me Jason Moss is kind of shoehorning an offense in and around Cody Fajardo that maybe Fajardo's skill set wasn't a fit for. Has Jason Moss learned that lesson and now as a head coach and building a new offense with Montreal and all the pieces that they have, will it be a better fit for Cody Fajardo? I think Fajardo is a lot better quarterback than we saw last year in front of a Swiss cheese Rough Riders offensive line. I really have, Montreal, Ottawa too. They're two teams I think are really going to push Toronto, to reign supreme in the East.
Hey, DB, just before we go, we'll get back to hockey with Murat Atesh of The Athletic in just a minute. I'm bringing it back to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Do you expect much the rest of this week? And will just be some value signings to try to, replace some of the depth that the team lost?
Well, people are already saying, like, how are the Blue Bombers affording all of these contracts? How did they afford Kenny Lawler with bringing all these other guys back and signing big extensions with their star players? So how much money is there? How much work can they do? I don't know if it's too much, but I think Blue Bombers fans, I'll leave them with this. Rest assured, the roster looks rock solid top to bottom. And with the coaching staff back, continuity kills and in a good way. So 2023 is shining bright and looking very positive, Hustler. You're right. You said it earlier. They're the team to beat in the CFL.
Coast to Coast Unfinished Business Tour starts in week 1. Looking forward to it. Darren, great to have you back on the program, man. Great work covering free agency, folks. Make sure to check out all the content Darren's got over at Bonfire Sports. Let's do this again soon, buddy.
You got it, Huss. Take care, man.
All right, great stuff with Darren Bombing. We are going to get back to some Jets talk with Murat Atesh from The Athletic. And as I said, we were talking a little bit about the trade deadline, and we will get into that as well in a few minutes. If you are thinking about a new jersey, you might want to wait until after the 3rd to get your jersey. But in the meantime, the best selection of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, Bomber merchandise, NHL, hopefully some Super Bowl champion shirts for the red and gold of the Kansas City Chiefs, all at Royal Sports, Winnipeg's #1 sports superstar. We've also got some great things. Listen, if you're thinking about spring break getting out there, the leaders in snowboards, obviously selection around, skates for the river, skates for high-end hockey players, the best selection of sticks. If it's sports, whether playing or fan gear, there's no better selection anywhere than Royal Sports. Pop down and see them, 750 Pembina Highway. And you can also check them out and follow them on Instagram for the latest merchandise drops and sale information over at Royal Sports Pembina. Speaking of wardrobes, folks, guys, if you're looking ahead to the summer or spring and realizing it might be time to up the wardrobe game, you know there's only one place for Winnipeg men for all of their needs, and that is F Apparel at 190 Smith Street downtown. The best prices on the coolest custom suits around, starting at just $400. An easy process where you go in, pick your colors, your fabrics, you get measured up, and a few weeks later you got a great looking suit fit to order at a great price from F Apparel. While there, check out their amazing options for all sorts of men's accessories. And guys, if you're in a wedding party this year, talk to the guys at F Apparel about a 15% discount for the entire wedding party when you get your suits at F. And for 2023 high school grads, a free custom shirt and tie with the purchase of any suit right now at F Apparel. Inquire online at fepapparel.com. Make an appointment or pop down and see them at 190 Smith Street. And hey, shout out to our friends at Boston Pizza as well. Popped into BP after the game last night. A lot of happy Jet fans. Great spot before and after the game at Boston Pizza City Place. And as the Jets now get back out on the road, the best place in town to gather with your friends to watch the big game on the big screen with big sound and enjoy all the great Boston Pizza treats available. And hey, if you're not going out tonight, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, we've got Murat Atesh coming up in just a minute. I'm looking forward to having Murat. He's got his latest piece in The Athletic on Winnipeg Jet trade targets. We'll get to that, as well as another 2 points in the books last night for the home teams. They head on the road. Let's welcome Murat in right now. Murat, how are you, my friend? Great to have you back on the program.
Wow.
Hold on one sec, Murat. We've got to get the audio fixed here. Oh, okay. I'm just going to get this done up. The latest piece, as I mentioned, dropped yesterday at The Athletic. Different options for the Winnipeg Jets when it comes to the trade deadline. The title is Winnipeg Jets trade targets 7 defenders for top pair or added depth. Murat, what's up? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you. You got me. How are things?
Things are great. Back at it. Got a couple days off. Michael Reams did a great job holding it down. Still in a bit of a high from the Super Bowl, but I did come back and basically went straight to the rink last night. And I'm glad I did. A pretty fun game, a great crowd for a Valentine's Day tilt. And obviously what most people came to see, the Winnipeg Jets grinding out 2 points, and they did exactly that. What did you think of the team's performance last night in the shootout win?
I mean, I know I'm supposed to answer that question, but what a sporting life you are leading this year. World Cup, Super Bowl. I don't know what else you got, but like, oh my God.
Hopefully
man.
A lot of whiteouts here in Winnipeg.
Well, it was closer to that kind of atmosphere for just a couple of moments last night. I mean, that moment where Adam Lowry kicked out those 2 shots.
Amazing.
Like ovation on his way to the bench. And I mean, that was special. I mean, that's the type of crowd display that we haven't really seen since the good times, I think, in Winnipeg. And it was well appreciated. Rick Bowness was just in awe of it. He was quick to praise the crowd when I asked about it, talking about how knowledgeable Winnipeg fans are and how it's more than just, the big goals and the big hits and things like that. It's little important plays. And he just, he felt as though it was an acknowledgement of Winnipeg's effort to do everything possible to win the game. And Adam Lowry was a nice symbol of that. So that was fun. And, Seattle's a very good team with a lot of quickness and a lot of pressure. And other than that one goal in transition that the Jets gave up, Winnipeg kept a very good team in check throughout the whole night and managed to, bounce a goal in and then win in the shootout too.
Yeah, what a pass by Alexiak on that breakout play. I think he actually caught the Jets a little flat-footed. I'm not sure they figured that Alexiak had that club in his bag. And next thing you know, it was out. And, I mean, Nikolai Ehlers caught watching a little bit, on that play defensively, which actually will get to a topic that you've covered a little bit in this piece right now. But just before we move off of last night's game, couldn't agree more with you. The Lowry kick saves on the PK, and the PK overall in the first period was huge. I mean, when you're killing 6 of 20 minutes and your top players are on the ice, you really do need to stay in that game. They did that. but it really did symbolize what this team, I think, has done all year long, doing whatever it takes to win games. And there was a lot of people, not just applauding, but on their feet in the upper bowl around me. And it was a great moment for the game. Got to talk about David Riddick, though. Man, he had a terrible start. We all remember 4 goals in the first period. I mean, maybe the worst way a season could have possibly started. And for him now to be 9-4 on the season, a .252 goals against average, a .911 save percentage in the entire game, in the entire season, including that ugly start. Talk about money well spent. I mean, he has really, really helped this team in a big way get to where they are in the standings right now, knocking on the door of the Dallas Stars for first place in the Central and the West.
I mean, imagine coming out of the season he had last year, where things were tough for him. And he was talking, first impression that we had of him in a Zoom this summer was he was talking about, well, hey, he needs to get into more games, more consistency, all of these sorts of things that you thought, he's probably not going to get in Winnipeg. He's not going to get more starts behind Connor Hellebuyck than he did, in Nashville. And so to go from that and the big expectations of being able to solidify Winnipeg's goaltending after the season he had, to have such a difficult start and then iron things out and be a solid backup, which, Winnipeg absolutely needed. It needed somebody you can count on. That speaks to, things going well for David Riddick, but also him handling his business. And he was talking today with us. It was another hilarious scrum from David Riddick. He was, making fun of the reporters' questions a little bit. He was making fun of Adam Lowry's kick saves a little bit as well. But, he also got sincere, and he said that the mental side of going from, starter's duties to being a backup in the NHL was a bit of a transition for him. It has been a challenge for him and something he's needed to work on. He feels like he's got things under control in terms of his preparation at this stage of the game. And Rick Bowness echoed that same thing, saying, well, we're well beyond the part of the point of the season where you have to wonder about David Riddick. The team has confidence in front of him, and that's all you can ask for.
Well, and last night, I think maybe even more impressive that, this wasn't a planned start. They had, tagged Connor Hellebuyck, and then he came down sick in the morning skate, and obviously, get ready to go. You're going in, and did play very, very well. We did see a swap of the top line, and Bowness talked about this afterwards, keeping the pairs together, Dubois and Connor, Scheifele and Wheeler, swapping Ehlers, swapping Perfetti. And you've talked about this a little bit. Both of those players at times might not see as much ice time when protecting leads later on. Maybe touch on that for a minute, Muradin. What is the Jets' top line right now? Or maybe the best formation of those players up top? Or does Rick Bowness know the answer to that question yet, despite being 54 games in?
It's funny, in one of my preseason bold predictions, they call it, pieces, one of my bold predictions was that Rick Bowness would do something that fans would roast Paul Maurice for, and everybody would probably be all right with it. And I think that reestablishing that Wheeler-Scheifele pairing as a duo that you have to go to, it's part of his foundation, probably falls under that category.
Absolutely it does. If we'd had this conversation at the start of the year, I don't think we would expect what's happening right now with this club.
Yeah, and credit to them. That Blake Wheeler goal last night after Nick Ehlers wins, steals a puck after Winnipeg loses an offensive zone draw. That was some pretty crazy hands from Wheeler. He almost won it in overtime as well. Performance has been there for Blake Wheeler, and you got to respect that. At the same time, gosh, what an old trope. So with Connor and Dubois as a lefty duo that Bowness is not going to move away from, and Wheeler-Scheifele as a righty-righty duo that they're not going to move away from. One thing that has happened throughout the season is Connor and Dubois have often ended up with a left-handed right winger. So that would be Cole Perfetti a lot of the time, maybe Nick Ehlers every once in a while as well. And in late games, when Winnipeg's protecting a lead, that player, we'll call him Cole Perfetti because that's who it usually is, gets pulled out. And a right-handed player like Mason Appleton gets that job for a few minutes, or Carson Kuhlman as well. Players who probably have less of an impact than Cole Perfetti, but who Rick Bowness trusts to do one thing, which is to eat a hit on the boards during a breakout with a defenseman pinching on him and get that puck out of the zone. And that's what's happening there. It's a combination, in my mind, of Cole Perfetti being a rookie. So there's, in Rick Bowness's mind, if he needs to shuffle somebody, it's easier to send him to the fourth line for a moment. He's not going to, have the same stature of complaint as perhaps somebody higher up on the lineup. Also, he's trying to manage the expectations for the young player, which I don't know if he needs it because Perfetti's a smart defensive player. But he's also trying to save a smaller player from eating that check and maybe not getting the puck out of the zone. The reason I specify the handedness in all of this is think about a left-handed winger on the right wing boards. If he's reaching back for a puck on his forehand, that means he's turned his back to the defenseman who's pinching down the boards at him. That could be, from Bowness's perspective, a slightly more difficult play to make. And it would also explain why Perfetti gets pushed out of those minutes for right-handers. And when Nick Ehlers was playing in that role, he also gets pushed out of those minutes when protecting a lead. I don't know if Bowness needs to fine-tune things so precisely because he's doing it when the Jets are up by 2 goals as well in games that Perfetti's playing well defensively, like Saturday against Chicago. But it's a clear preference. And he talked about it again today. Well, this time with Saku Maenalanen joining Wheeler and Scheifele over the left-handed Perfetti on the left side, also a lefty, but he just likes his size. He just likes his ability to eat that check. And it's a very specific contextual thing. I don't know if the Jets need that, but they're game planning for it. And, if he's doing it now, he'll be doing it in the playoffs for sure.
Well, for sure. And I mean, let's face it, there's plenty of possibilities, but I mean, one that would be near the top of the probability charts would be a first-round matchup with the Minnesota Wild, who are a very aggressive team that will come at you, that will make you earn every space of ice. I do wonder right now, and obviously the trade deadline I think will be hugely impactful as to the answer to this question, but whether Cole Perfetti is a top 6 regular come playoff time for Rick Bowness.
Yeah, I think that's a good question to be asking right now. If you look at the way that Rick Bowness manages those minutes, and I just got into all of that, he manages them like he could very much use and appreciate a veteran, top 6 capable, middle 6 you might call him, ideally a right-handed forward who can play with Connor and Dubois and make sure he gets that puck out. Because it's not like Kyle Connor on the other side is winning that battle and muscling that puck out any better than Nikolai Ehlers or Cole Perfetti necessarily. But, if Connor and Dubois is a staple, and believe me it is when Rick Bowness is coaching, and they've been great, he wants that right-handed player on that side. And I think that's a viable spot that the Jets may be shopping. Same for a lefty who he trusts on that up with Wheeler and Scheifele. It's also possible that if Winnipeg swings and misses, then Bowness is showing us exactly what he'll do, and these other players will get promoted as the case may be. But I sincerely think he wants a righty and, ideally a veteran, maybe even somebody who can win a faceoff or two, but also play on that right side.
Murat, as we get closer to the trade deadline, first of all, I mean, I know you're talking with your colleagues around the league. What do you gather the goal of Jets management and Kevin Cheveldayoff is going in? Is it to get the best player on the board, or is it maybe to add multiple pieces of depth as well as impact in the middle of the lineup?
Yeah, I might even zoom out above that a little bit and say there's a philosophical question, I think, facing the Winnipeg Jets, which is they recognize this is a unique year for them, but how much are they willing to pay to solidify things? They're not running teams out of the building. They're second in the West, which is wonderful, but they're not absolutely dominant. If they want to add one of the high-priced pieces, they're going to have to shop their futures, top prospects, Rutger McGroarty, Chaz Lucius, Ville Heinola, Brad Lambert. These are players that could be asked for. And we're just at a point in Winnipeg Jets evolution where they stopped trading so many draft picks away all of the time, and they are able to restock the cupboard. So philosophically, there's a sense of, we recognize this is a unique year in the West. The Jets are good. They believe in Rick Bowness. They believe in the results that they've had so far. But it's how much are you willing to pay to solidify that in a Western Conference that seems wide open? And then going in from there, I really do think that both things are possible. I think that players as impactful as Timo Meier are calls that get made And it's just a question of whether Winnipeg could outbid the various other teams in situations like that, or a Ryan O'Reilly, who could be that right-handed guy I was talking about a minute ago. If it's not somebody like that, though, I still think Winnipeg adds to solidify things, because you can tell from the way they're coaching, they could use another player like that. And Chevy's been pretty good at finding players off the radar, too, that have filled roles in the past.
Now, just as I was bringing it on, I mentioned the piece that dropped in The Athletic yesterday with the Jets trade targets, and it did focus on the blue line. If you had to go one or the other, is blue line the priority, do you think, for the Winnipeg Jets, as opposed to, what they have up front?
I think, and the forwards...
Not that they're mutually exclusive.
No, they're not mutually exclusive. And, Winnipeg has done both in the past. Absolutely, they have. Whether it's Paul Stastny and Joe Morrow back in 2018, or in 2020, Cody Eakin and Dylan DeMello, which not the same level of impact, especially in Eakin's case. But there you go, right? Like, they're willing to do that when they believe that there's use to it. So I've got the forwards piece up as well. And I think that that's what makes more sense, because Bowness outright hides Perfetti down the stretch of games in certain situations. There's no defenseman getting similar treatment. There's a clear top four in, Morrissey, Brendan Dillon, Neil Pionk, Dylan DeMello, Nate Schmidt, and then usually it's Dylan Samberg are the clear third pairing, and their minutes aren't as hard as the top four. That's a real thing. They're slightly sheltered, but nobody's getting hidden. And even amongst defensemen that Winnipeg has protected from tough matchups over the years, there's some very specific stretches of play where they've really tried hard to protect Logan Stanley in his rookie season, Tucker Poolman back in 2017-18. If you get into the nitty-gritty, you can look at all of the ways that they dodge matchups. They're not doing that as much with Samberg and Schmidt. And Samberg is having excellent results, and in terms of his defending, he's contributing to the PK as well. I don't think that that's a spot you need to add unless it's veteran depth that you just want as insurance. Call him Luke Shen, Joel Edmondson, or somebody who's going to dramatically change the window for Winnipeg, and that's Jacob Chychrun. I don't think that that's what's happening for the Jets. I think that Chychrun will end up as a Los Angeles King, but that's the type of thing. It's got to be somebody who helps well beyond this year, or maybe tinkering. Whereas I think forwards there's more room for greater impact.
Hey, just before we go through some of these options in the piece, Chychrun's been held out. Gavrikov's been held out. What do you make of that? I mean, is this the general managers with really nothing to lose, holding a player out, trying to, if nothing else, get the perceived imminence of a trade that may or may not be there for them to jack up the price and try and get a deal done sooner as opposed to later?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? I mean, traditionally you think, okay, they're being pulled out. This does mean something is imminent. But then you add a couple of wrinkles. Like, think about Arizona, who would love a top pick, who essentially has the tank on, or else why would they move Chychrun at all, right? They're looking at their future. Maybe you pull your star defenseman out of the, a couple of extra games, and the tank battle for last place, your odds get ever so slightly better. I don't think it's as complicated as that. I think that probably they think that there's something pretty close there. Maybe there is posturing, and I'm just making it too simple in my mind. But I genuinely think that moves like this happen because we've seen Tarasenko move. We've seen transactions already, and maybe more of the noise happens, I think, a couple of weeks out than on deadline day.
Well, and whoever was watching Remo hold it down yesterday and talk with Dave Poulin, Pooley did say he thinks that the Chychrun deal is done, but they are waiting for the team that's acquiring Chychrun to have enough cap space to make the deal right now. And, that is one thing that the Jets don't have to deal with right now because of the way they've handled the cap and are in a pretty nice situation that a lot of other teams aren't, with the ability to add players, which gets us to the wish list. We've talked about Chychrun, and I mean, he would be a great, great add for the Winnipeg Jets. You mentioned how that would change the window somewhat with the 2 years left on his deal. But moving on from him, Erik Karlsson, I think to many people seems like somewhat of a pipe dream, although my pals in Edmonton have been spending a lot of oxygen talking about what Karlsson would look like in that lineup and what it would take to get him there. He's having a monster season. I mean, he's one of the great comeback stories after a couple disappointing years in San Jose. Like, whether we're talking about the Jets or not, with the way Karlsson is playing right now, numbers aside, huge cap hit. You got to figure all that out. But how big of an addition would he be to a team like Winnipeg or Edmonton or whoever could get Karlsson in if they can make the numbers work?
I mean, massive, absolutely massive. I think he's the sort of player that a team acquires that wants to win right now and does not care about the years left on his deal, the fact he's 32 turning 33. It's just respect for a player having, a Norris-worthy season. Maybe Adam Fox is the front runner. Maybe Josh Morrissey is seen as a better defender as well. But he's having an incredible season. And if you imagine him on the Edmonton Oilers blue line firing those beautiful stretch passes to a Connor McDavid or joining rushes, leading rushes with the transition offense that some of Edmonton's stars have, Edmonton's a team, especially also adding Evander Kane last year, that sort of is willing to do whatever it takes and worry about the consequences later. I think that there's a reasonable fit there. But at the same time, let's think about Winnipeg for a second. And let's think about Winnipeg having the cap space that you just talked about, doesn't need San Jose to eat nearly as much, which might mean that he's a cheaper acquisition for the Jets than for other teams. And there's a clear spot, I think, with Josh Morrissey and let's call him Dylan DeMello being able to hold that top pair down, Morrissey having just a tremendous season, DeMello being the safe partner who makes the consistent outlet passes and all that I talk about him a lot anyway. But on that second pairing where Brendan Dillon is an absolute fixture, imagine the right-handed Erik Karlsson as an upgrade to Neil Pionk, who takes most of those minutes. Pionk having, kind of a down year, and there's questions about what level he'll be able to return to. It's been a little while since he's been excellent. And Erik Karlsson is a phenomenal defenseman every single night. If you have a top four where there's a member of each pairing who can absolutely take over the game, that is a game changer for the Winnipeg Jets. And I know the consequences would be dire years from now, whatever, getting out of that deal when you need to. But it's just fun on paper to daydream about right now, for sure.
No, absolutely. And that's why we wanted to talk about it. And hey, until a deal is done or we get to the third and the deadline passes, it's fun to kick around possibilities like that. Most people would agree it's probably more likely the Jets add to the blue line on some of the names, maybe a little further down the list. Thoughts on the fit and where these players are at right now? Joel Edmondson, who's got a pretty nice pedigree, and Luke Schenn, a guy that, I'll be honest, if you told me at the start of this year we'd be talking about Schenn being a guy that a number of teams are interested in, I probably would have laughed it off. But he quietly is having a pretty decent season, and of course comes with that Cup pedigree after runs with Tampa as well. What do you think about those two players? Does one make more sense, and would one cost significantly more than the other?
I think each of them fit the bill of what a contending team might look at, and Winnipeg would be no exception to that. Veterans, experience, Stanley Cups, that's a valued item, and that's not something that Winnipeg can really boast a lot of in terms of experienced players with Stanley Cup pedigree. Joel Edmondson has a few teams on his no-trade clause. Of course, he's also from Brandon and was so proud of that he brought the Cup back to the Keystone Center when he won it with St. Louis. So maybe Winnipeg's an okay spot for him, not sure. Luke Schenn as well. I mean, I'm with you. I didn't think he was going to be in this kind of conversation. But he can play both sides, Schenn can. And, Winnipeg, I think, could use that skill set a little bit. You like the physicality, too. You don't get a lot of that duplicated throughout the rest of Winnipeg's roster. And maybe the fact that Schenn's having a strong season right here and now makes him more palatable than Joel Edmondson, whose, best work, at least metrics-wise, is a couple of years old already. And it's tough to suss out in Montreal who gets credit and who gets blame and who's playing at what level on that blue line. Maybe Schenn, I think, is the one that I kind of land on as being a bit of a fit for Winnipeg.
Murat, one other name that, that kind of caught me by surprise, but the more you think about it, what the cost would be, our old pal Cooley, Dmitry Kulikov. And, you made a great point. I mean, 2019-2020 was really a strong season for Neil Pionk. He spent the majority of that year riding along with Dmitry Kulikov. Thoughts on that fit? I don't think the cost would be huge, that's for sure. And what a guy like that might bring, and would he even be a player if he was acquired by the Jets?
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, Most of my memories of Kulikov are thinking, oh my goodness, what an expensive third pairing defenseman to partner with Tyler Myers. And, that whole third pair was so expensive. But for a third pair, they were good and they got the job done. And even when Kulikov was, fleeing the zone to land huge hits, and then all of a sudden there's a rush against, they had positive contributions to that team. So I didn't expect that with Neil Pionk in 2019-20 that could be a top four solid, play against the tough competition type of pairing. But it was. Kulikov adapted his game. He chased hits less often. Neil Pionk was probably the most mobile, aggressive defender of the Winnipeg Jets blue line that season than he's been since then. And that was such a tremendous year for Pionk. And you wonder if there's chemistry there that could be had. I don't think, let's say Neil Pionk is a second pairing Jets defenseman. I don't think you're going to supplant Brendan Dillon with Kulikov out of a search for chemistry just to make that work. Maybe Kulikov, if the Jets were interested and acquired him cheaply, he does have no move or no trade, a few teams on that list as well. He could be the sort of person that could be a third pairing or press box. And I think that might be an aisle that the Jets enjoy right now. Somebody who's not going to necessarily automatically mess with the chemistry that exists in Winnipeg's blue line, but somebody that they can plug in when needed. Because no team wants to be the 2006 Buffalo Sabres. I don't know if this is like a deep poll or if people remember that, but that team was in control of the Carolina Hurricanes Eastern Conference Final Series before Winnipeg's old friend Teppo Numminen, Henrik Talander, it goes Kalinin. I think they lost something like 5 or 6 defensemen over the course of a week, then lost the series. Carolina wins the cup. That's a story that gets passed around a lot. And I don't think that any team, especially Winnipeg, would want to repeat that kind of problem.
Well, and it's funny you say that. I mean, going back to my Moose days, I'd always talk with Craig Heisinger about team building and whatnot. He'd say, listen, if you want to make a run, and this was talking about the Calder Cup, you need 10 defensemen. Well, that number is now a dozen, according to those guys in the National Hockey League. And the example that you just laid out is a perfect reminder of why guys might not be in the lineup on one night. They could be playing huge and important minutes later on in a 7-game series. Murat, moving over to your piece on the forwards, which came out on the weekend. We spent a lot of time talking about Timo Meier. We know that he's the apple of not just Winnipeg fans, but many fan bases' eyes right now. The next couple guys on your list, you mentioned Ryan O'Reilly and Jonathan Toews. And I guess before we get to O'Reilly, Toews, in some ways, is a bit of a polarizing figure when it comes to these conversations. There's some people that will look at his incredible pedigree, what he's done, his versatility, what he can do in the face-off circle, and say, how could you not be in on a guy like this? And then others, including Jeff Merrick on 32 Thoughts, suggesting that it's the heart says yes, but when you actually see where he is right now, how well does he fit in? And, we often look at metrics and numbers. I don't know if anyone on the Chicago Blackhawks can be expected on having good numbers for anything with how weak that team is right now. Where are you on Toews and the player that he is right now and what the Winnipeg Jets would get if they acquired him in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I spent some time on it in the piece because I think that Jonathan Toews elicits a lot of hot takes right now. And
big time.
To just zoom in and just try to figure out what kind of a player he is. I agree with you. Nobody on the Chicago Blackhawks is likely to have great metrics right now. And, if you look at Evolving Wild or Hockey Viz, Toews shows up as not a good player from a possession standpoint. It's when you zoom out and look at the last 2-3 seasons and see that he hasn't had a tremendously positive impact during those seasons either, that you begin to sort of check your expectations a little bit. And I know that he has the pedigree. I also know that he's had some health concerns over the last couple of years, and I don't necessarily think it's related, but he's missed the last several games now as well. That whereas health concerns may have eaten into some of his impact there as well. I tend to believe that a veteran with the pedigree that Toews has is the sort that can find the best version of himself down the stretch run in the playoffs and all those sorts of things. But the best version of himself right now is not a Conn Smythe winner, number one center, et cetera, is probably somebody who can play on the second or third line. And, we talked about winning those battles and getting those pucks out of the zone and all of that stuff earlier. Well, if you're Scheifele and Wheeler and you need a lefty you can trust, and it's not going to be Adam Lowry because he just took an important face-off, then maybe Jonathan Toews can bump up from whatever third or line or second line role he's playing and play wing up there. He can take the draw, move Scheifele to wing, play second power play. He'd be more of a utility player with experience and pedigree, to my way of thinking, than a star. And if people manage their expectations to that degree, forget about his price tag as a cap hit and all of that, I could still see him helping the Winnipeg Jets.
One more for you before we go. Ryan O'Reilly, and we know what O'Reilly's done. He's done it more recently than Jonathan Toews. He's also has not produced very much this year. And when you look at the Green Jacket leaders, he's had one of the worst plus minuses in the league, which does not seem to compute with O'Reilly. Where is he at right now?
I mean, yeah, he what a surprising enormous minus number. And he's not dominating the flow of play for St. Louis, which is astonishing because he's close to a perfect 200-foot player when he's on his game. And he's not that far from being on his game last season, 2 seasons ago, whereas you have to look a little bit further for Toews to have that kind of impact. So I actually prefer O'Reilly because he's done it more recently. I think he struggled in St. Louis this year. I also think that he's available. I think there's perfect symmetry with the Paul Stastny acquisition once upon a time as well. I actually like that acquisition a little bit. The possibility of that acquisition for Winnipeg, because I believe the playoff version of Ryan O'Reilly would find his game. And if you're looking at that minus number, one little just tidbit on the way out, I think St. Louis goalies have something like an .850 save percentage with Ryan O'Reilly on the ice at 5-on-5 this year. That will normalize. He might have given up a few too many chances, but that goal number, that's just one of those crazy things that happens as opposed to his level of play.
Marat, really enjoyed both pieces in The Athletic. Folks, get over and read them if you haven't already, and make sure you're subscribing to all the great work over there. Thanks very much. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you next week about a big road trip for the Winnipeg Jets and see if they can keep this winning streak going.
Right on, Huss. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. At WPG Marat, that's Marat Atesh of The Athletic with us on WST. We are going to talk a little curling coming up. Looking forward to having Reed Carruthers join us before the Brier, but figured we'd get Manitoba champion Matt Dunstone on coming up. We are going to be talking more curling over the course of the next month because the Scotties starts on Friday, Brier in early March, and a whole bunch of Manitoba talent going for national championships on both sides. Of course, all of our curling reports on Winnipeg Sports Talk are brought to you by Princess Auto, a huge supporter of the game, both here in Manitoba and across the country. And of course, you know that Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Culligan Water has been taking care of Manitobans' water needs for over 65 years in business, is family-owned and the go-to people for all things water in our area. They really do have it all. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems and drinking water systems, not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and see the experts at Culligan, 1200 Sargent Avenue, 694-5180. And online at drinkculligan.com. And just before we bring in Matt Dunstone, a big shout out to our friends over at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. I have a feeling the fellas may have tilted one after a big win in the Manitoba Championship. And folks, when you're thinking whiskey, think of Canada's best, the legendary Canadian Club. Pick it up at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And don't forget, next time you're in a beer store, you can also grab in cans pre-mixed Canadian Club and ginger ale. All right, let's get to a little curling talk. Scotty's starting on the weekend, Brier coming up after that, and there is a new team on top of Manitoba curling, the top dogs led by Skip Matt Dunstone, who joins me right now. Matty D, congratulations on coming back to Manitoba and getting it done on the weekend. How are you? Oh, hold on a sec. We just got to get the audio. I'm not hearing you. Okay. Rima, is that on our side? Okay, perfect. Yeah, perfect. We got you. Hey, congrats and welcome to the program. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Feels great. We're still resting and recovering from the little celebration we had Sunday evening, but feels pretty damn good.
We spoke at the start of the year, and I mean, it was really one of the big stories in curling. I mean, there was a lot of player movement, a lot of different teams that were being put together, and maybe the most exciting one in the country was the one that you put together, coming back and representing your home province of Manitoba. You got incredible experience with BJ Neufeld. Ryan Harden, we know that he's been in so many big games over the years, and Colton Lotz turned into one of the best young players in the game, a guy you've got a huge history with. But man, did you think it could all come together this quickly as well as it has this season for Team Dunstone?
Maybe not as quickly and as kind of consistently as it has. Always thought the ceiling with this squad was quite high when we put the team together. Like you said, I mean, everybody's resumes speak for themselves, and Colty Lotz becoming one of the best young players in the game. If he's not considered that already, he should be. But yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty good season to this point. Top it off with the Manitoba Championship, and would love nothing more than to raise the Brier Tankard in a couple weeks.
Now, before we get to winning Manitoba and what's to come, you guys have had a hell of a season on the tour. I mean, for folks that maybe kind of pay more attention to curling when the Manitoba Championships happen and we get into the Brier, fill us in on just the successes you guys have had pretty much right out of the gate as one of the top teams in the country.
Yeah, right from the get-go. I mean, we went semifinal, final, kind of in our first month, and we just carried that momentum from there. I mean, we've been able to hold on to that number one spot in Canada for most of the season now, and have set us up quite well to kind of be a staple within the top 5 in the world. So, I mean, it's been a great start for sure. I mean, it took us a little while to win our first championship. Had to lose a slam final first in October there, I guess it was, before we finally picked up our first one in November. But it's been really consistent. Been nice to pick up a couple championships along the way, and we just continue to get better every single time we get out there.
Let's talk about the fellas on the team. I mean, BJ, we know the level of player that he has been with over the last decade plus. How does he fit in as third on your squad, and the connection that those two positions, yours as the skip and the third, have so important at the level you guys are playing at?
Yeah, just the leadership role that he plays, on this rink, and he being an older guy and compared to me, I mean, no moment's too big for him, and he can kind of reel me in a little bit when I'm getting excited out there, maybe trying to take on a little bit more difficult shot for 4 or 5.
That's never happened before, has it, Matt?
No, exactly right. Where BJ is able to kind of reel me in a little bit, then maybe here's a good spot to take 1 or 2, and to be able to sort of have that setup that we do, where we got a young guy on the front end, young guy on the back end, and an older guy on the front end, older guy on the back end. That's something that's worked out really well. And me and Colton, I know we rely heavily on those two for those bigger moments to kind of reel us in a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you put that out. It was sort of the way I was going to ask the question. I mean, you had that connection with BJ on the back, and tell us about the connection between Ryan and Colton up front, and just how important their performances have been in the incredible year that Team Dunstone's had up until this point.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, everybody's kind of in their normal position except for Colton. I mean, Colton's been a lifelong third or even a skip last year, so this was a brand new position for him, and he's done nothing but just blossom into one of the best seconds in the world right from the get-go. I mean, we knew the shot making was going to be there. That's obvious with him, but just the sweeping and the weight judging and what the work he's had to put in on that side of things. Again, brand new territory for him, and he's been phenomenal. Him and Ryan are so good at communicating with one another, and the way they navigate a rock down the sheet is better than anybody else. And, both of them have played enormous roles in our success.
So let's take us back to Neepawa on the run you guys had. I mean, first of all, how cool was it for you just being back in the Manitoba Championships again? We had lots of funny comments saying, once again, Saskatchewan needs Manitobans to, be competitive, but you're back from Saskatchewan playing with great Manitoban players, and 1-for-1 now as the guys that were left standing at the end of a great tournament in Neepawa.
Yeah, it felt great. I mean, just to be back there, seeing familiar faces, obviously people who were working for Crow Manitoba, being able to see a lot of family and close friends that I hadn't seen for a while out in Neepawa cheering us on. I mean, that's sort of the stuff that I've been missing quite a bit with my 5 years that I had over in Saskatchewan. So, it was great to even compete against a lot of familiar faces, people that you would have played against in juniors and early in my men's career too. So, felt very comfortable early on. Great to see everybody and to come back and pick up a championship in our first ever year together means a lot. I know Bolton specifically has had a lot of heartbreak in this event, and obviously BJ had too, kind of before they started winning at a rapid pace. So, it's an event that meant a lot to us. I think you could see that sort of how we celebrated after the win. Even though we knew we were going to the Brier, regardless of what happened in that game, you could see how much it meant to us.
Well, exactly. And obviously it was against Reed Carruthers, who's also a great friend of the program and one of the top teams. And they've had their own issues with, looking a little different from where things are out on the World Tour as opposed to how they were in Manitoba. But no doubt, two heavyweight teams like that was going to be a hell of a final. And that's exactly what it is. But you guys had to work the full 10 to pull that one out.
Yeah, in an 8-end game, that one wouldn't have worked out in our favor. So luckily we had the 10 to work with. And we kind of joked right from September with Reed's team that, likely that was going to be the final. And sure enough, here we are. I think that was our 7th or 8th matchup against them this year. And we have already played them in 2 finals prior to that. So, it wasn't uncharted territory by any stretch of the matter. And I think it's a great thing for the province of Manitoba to have 2 of the top level teams in the world kind of duking it out, pushing each other, being able to play in that sort of event, in that sort of setting before the Brier and the World Championships, I think is something that is hugely important to have within your province. And it's things that are going to make both our teams better for the years to come.
Matt Dunstone, Manitoba champ, is with us. I'm sure that sounds good to be introduced that way. Just for people that, you're still out west as your home base right now. You've got guys here, Hardens at West. How have things worked? When you guys aren't playing in events, how much time do you guys get to practice together? And maybe because of that, what are this couple weeks going to look like heading into this massive event for you guys representing the Buffalo at the Brier?
Yeah, we're, like you said, we're scattered a little bit everywhere. Ryan's obviously Sault Ste. Marie, our coach Adam in Ottawa, and I'm here in Kamloops. A lot of what our season has been is getting together, whether it be in Winnipeg or wherever the event is. We usually get there a handful of days early. Before the provincials, I was in Winnipeg for over a week, practicing with the guys. And the Brier is going to be very similar to that. It's a lot of days away from home. But it's winning those championships, putting yourselves in those moments that sort of make it all worth it. And so our plan right now is to head over to London. I believe we're going to leave Monday morning, kind of first thing. Brier starts on Friday. So we'll have 3 or 4 days there to practice up together and get ready to rock once again.
You've been there before, but never with this team, and now, of course, representing Manitoba. Been a long, you're still such a young guy, but have been playing at such a high level for so long. I imagine even with all the experiences you've had before, this is going to be really special.
Yeah, absolutely. You play in all those Briers prior to, and you see the Manitoba jacket over there on the other sheet, and that's always a little bit weird. And I think it's quite fitting that our very first game at the Brier this year is against Saskatchewan. And one of my old teammates, Dustin Kidby, is on the team as well as the alternate. So that's going to be pretty cool. That very first game there, I'm looking forward to that. Saskatchewan was a phenomenal province to me over the last 5 years. But at the end of the day, home is home, and to be able to put on that Buffalo for the very first time, and that's something that's invaluable, and just really looking forward to that moment.
Yeah, you won't be as welcomed at the Labor Day Classic next year, maybe between the Bombers and Riders. But hey, that was always the way it was anyways, as we knew you were a Manitoba guy at home. Matt Dunstone is with us. Brier coming up on the 3rd of March. And obviously, I think most people that follow curling know, but you kind of alluded to this, that you knew you were going to be going as one of the top teams in the country. But man, with that extra opportunity and those extra teams, it makes this field even more competitive. And I'm not sure the quality of curling has ever been better than it is right now from coast to coast in Canada as represented in that Brier field.
I think over even the last 3 or 4 years, the comment has always been, well, this is the best Brier field yet. And, that's sort of what this expansion has done, is it's allowed some of the top Canadian teams that are playing in difficult provinces that have a difficult time in their provincial championship, whether it be playing against us and Reed or Cooey and Botcher and some of those provinces that, have a bunch of heavyweights in there. I think it's phenomenal for the sport. You get a lot of young, new, fresh faces in there. Karsten Sturme would be one of the new wildcard teams that has been a great team on tour for years now, and they're finally getting their first crack at it. So I think the changes that have been made to allow some of these top teams that have a difficult time at provincials for obvious reasons, I think it's nothing but good for the sport. And like you said, the field, I mean, it's so deep, right? I mean, you got not only top teams in Canada, but the world. So the event is world class, and if you don't bring your A game, then you stand no chance. And I mean, that's the way it should be at a national championship.
I'm going to be doing a lock shop tomorrow with Dustin Nielsen, and the odds are already out. We'll be making some picks for the Scotties. How close do you and the fellas pay attention to the women's side of things? Will that be are you spending a lot of time on TSN watching what's happening at the Scotties over the next week?
Well, especially this time around, I'm not going to have much of a choice. I'm in my office right now, and it's actually right beside the Sandman Center where the Scotties is being played. So I'm going to be frequenting there quite often over the next 10 days. So, I love putting myself in that sort of atmosphere, especially getting to do that before playing in a very similar one, right? Just to kind of get a feel for it all and see how it all goes again, because obviously these opportunities come once a year if you're lucky. And I'm very excited to be out there watching, seeing how it all plays out. And I mean, we got a chance to witness some history here if Kerry can go and win her fourth in a row.
Well, and listen, it's going to be a real fun month for Canadian curling fans, but especially ones right here in Manitoba. You got Kerry, the legend herself, Jen Jones, and obviously would not be opposed to seeing a rematch of that Manitoba final in a big game on the weekend at the Brier with yourself and, of course, the Carruthers team. Matt, congratulations again. I know we'll be speaking with you again soon. Good luck at the Brier, and enjoy the Scotties next week.
You bet. Yeah, looking forward to getting a little bit of rest here, recovering from the celebration on the weekend, and looking forward to taking in some great curling and cheering on our 4 Manitoba teams in the Scotties.
4 Manitoba teams, just amazing. I'll tell you what, there's going to be a lot of talk about Manitoba curling, and you're at the top of the mountain right now. Congratulations again. Look forward to catching up, and good luck representing the new return province coming up at the Brier. Thanks so much, dude.
I love it. Thanks, Andrew.
Good stuff. There's Matt Dunstone. You can follow them on Twitter at Team Dunstone for the latest on your Manitoba champs. All right. We got to get Remo back in here. There's a few things that we definitely need to touch on. But before we do that, Matt was just mentioning the big celebration in Neepawa after they won the trip to the Brier, well, the opportunity to represent Manitoba. Listen, a lot of those celebrations might involve beers. And when you're in Manitoba celebrating a Manitoba title, I would imagine that some of Manitoba's favorite beer, Little Brown Jug, was involved. Of course, you can get the great taste of Little Brown Jug at the brewery and tap room down on William Avenue. You can also grab it at fine beer stores. Make sure to check out that new Good Times variety pack. And heck, when you're out on the town, maybe grabbing a pint, check out if they've got 1919 available at fine bars and restaurants throughout the city. Do not forget, you can also order Little Brown Jug for delivery online at littlebrownjug.ca and save the date, March 29th. The next edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Sports Trivia at Little Brown Jug. We'll have ticket information in a week or two for you folks here on WST. And hey, big shout out to our guy, Nick and Nikki over at the Nick and Nikki DQ group. 4 locations in Winnipeg and Manitoba to serve you, including the very busy DQ down in Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, all those great Blizzard treats, ice cream treats, amazing stack burgers and more. And don't forget, if you do need a DQ ice cream or Blizzard cake for an upcoming event, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. If you want to get something custom made and be ready for a quick and easy pickup at any of your 4 Nick and Nikki DQs. All right, let's get Remo back in here. Remo, what is going on?
I'm enjoying. Sorry?
I was just going to say, great chat with Matt. He's such a nice guy. We've had him on the program before. So this is going to be fun to follow the curling, which gets going Friday night with the first round of the Scotties. And, 4 Manitoba teams for the women. Some great Manitoba representation on the men's side, including our pal Reed Carruthers. It's going to be fun watching curling now, and perfect timing. NFL ends. We've got curling to get going right through the trade deadline and then the push to the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Perfect timing. Some big curling and big teams from Manitoba. Nice that they have these wild cards. And I always thought it was kind of unfair. Like if you played in like hockey, if you play in a stacked division, kind of get screwed in the playoffs. If you play in a stacked province, you may not get in. Reed Carruthers, he's ranked pretty high. You lose one game, but thankfully they have the wild card, so his team can get in too. I was actually thinking about this recently. You just think the Scotties, like Tournament of Hearts, like I thought it was like Lord Scotty or something it's named after. It's actually like the toilet paper, right? The paper towel.
Paper towels. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the Scotties now even more. I totally, I haven't watched in a while. They have the paper towels on the ice now, not digitally. Yeah. I think they're actually there.
Not digitally, yes.
but they have it painted on. But I forgot it was named after paper towel. The tournament, great paper
Scott
towel.
Towels, longtime supporter of the Scotties.
Great paper towel.
The Briar was the Labatt Briar forever. And now I believe it's still the Tim Hortons Briar, although that maybe could have that maybe changed. But a lot of fun having Matt on. We'll look forward to get Reed and hopefully Jen and Jen Jones as well. Of course, Jen will get going out there west where Maddie Dunstone is right now in Kelowna for the big event coming up starting on Friday. All right, listen, a couple of things that we should get to, and we'll save the football for last. I cannot help but notice, Remus, between just one picture of Andrew Ladd putting out Dustin Byfuglien, and I joked that give the guy a week on the third pairing and he'll be good for 20-plus minutes a night. This conversation about Buff has not stopped since the second that Andrew Ladd dropped that picture in his Instagram story.
No, it has not. And I'm going to pull up the picture. Andrew Ladd tweeting out, somehow got this guy on skates again, and we keep talking like the Jets need a big, strong defenseman, a right shot, Huss. You could bring him in low salary. I don't know what kind of salary he'd want. Like, what if Dustin Byfuglien has been secretly training to be the Jets trade deadline acquisition? I don't know if this actually happened, but apparently, I don't know if this is true. Someone wrote in chat, so it could be made up. But that Darren Dreger wrote about the Jets signing Byfuglien to a PTO. Like, I believe the chances of Byfuglien actually playing are zero. But I talked about this with Mike yesterday. Like
it's a fun conversation because of Buff. I mean, because it's Buff.
Well, the picture got more engagement than like any other picture we've ever thrown up. So the people are definitely interested. Although we did have one YouTube commenter say that he doesn't like Buff because he walked out on the franchise, which...
Oh, there's plenty of people that were in my mentions after that.
But the ovation that he would get if he came back. And there's people now in the chat all day. It's like, well, could he be better than whoever they have on third pair D? Like, could you put Buff on there? Could you have his booming shot on, get it on the power play? He
probably hasn't put skates on before that since 2019.
Who cares?
I'll say one thing about this picture. I was shocked at how good he looked. I mean, listen, we all know the way Buff rolls and what he's into. I thought that 4 years removed from his last game in the National Hockey League, that Buff would be 350. I mean, they look like Keith Tkachuk, if you've seen Tkachuk at either a Brady or Matthew game lately.
Was he double fisting at the All-Star game?
Entire time, he had 2 large Bud Lights in his hand. He was enjoying himself the entire time. But Buff actually in that picture looks really good. I mean, he always will be a huge man, but I got to give him credit. I mean, listen, not that I entertained this for more than a second when people are talking about it, but it was a longer second because he actually looks like he's in half decent shape right now for a guy that's been retired as long as he has.
Yeah. So someone said I'm feeding the beast. It's just so much fun to talk about. Like, just think about the ovation he would get. Like, what if he did come back? And like, you think people say he's 37 years old, and I'm like, well, he hasn't played the last couple of years, so he's got more. Doesn't have that wear and tear us because he's been sitting out, so he's really like 35, right? So, it's just the chances are zero. But the team has been missing like what he brings. I think any team would be missing what he could bring. But
the league's been missing him. I mean, it's just but guys, he's 37 years old. He hasn't played since 2019. For those of you that think that's going to be the look, listen, I'd be here for it, but I think it's a fool's game even trying to entertain that with a straight face right now. As much it was great for social media engagement.
The chances are zero, but it's so much fun to speculate. And I don't think that Darren Dreger thing is true. Someone just wrote that in chat. There's no way that that's true. But it is, again, it's fun. But I also said, Huss, like, what if he did come back and it was like The Undertaker wrestling Goldberg in Saudi Arabia? I feel like it could be like that. We're like, maybe these guys should have hung it up a couple years ago.
Yeah. As far as Buff, though, and I know you guys touched on this yesterday, at some point, Buff will be back here in Winnipeg. I think fans, and I think most fans, whatever, have moved on. I mean, it really did suck the way it ended, and it was bizarre for that to be the way that, you know, he finished playing in his National Hockey League career, walking away from the money that he did. But he's always been a guy that does things his own way, marches to the beat of his own drummer. And I think that as much as, you know, in a percentage of the fan base, there's still some ill will about what that did to the team that year. I think that would be gone in a heartbeat if it was announced that Buff would be coming back. And I'm not sure whether, I would imagine, does Buff go into the Ring of Honor at some point, or the Jets Hall of Fame at some point? It might take a little bit more time, and I think that would happen even no matter what. If it did happen, it would be down the road. But, man, if you're talking about Hall of Fame, I mean, Blake Wheeler guaranteed going in there. Dustin Byfuglien, pretty darn close considering, you know, the time that he spent here with this team.
I think that Mike said yesterday in our conversation, just the relationship between him and the organization put as it's complicated. Like, you know, when you put your relationship status on Facebook. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's going to take a while because I think it's still pretty fresh. Like if the Jets were, you know, there were a couple of years, like his contract would have already expired. But I mean, those 2 years that he walked away, they really, really missed him. And you think about, you know, a championship window, it did hurt.
Well, it was the timing of everything too. I mean, listen, if if he finishes up, at the end of 2019 and says, "Listen, it's been a great career, but I'm done," the team probably handles things differently. And it's still, it does make me sick that the last game that he played as a Winnipeg Jet was that basic no-show by the team in St. Louis in Game 6 after the infamous Game 5 loss here and the fact that Game 5 was the last time that he played on the ice in front of Winnipeg Jet fans. That being said, mark my words, at some point there will be some sort of a reconciliation and a recognition of Buff's incredible time here in Winnipeg, and you'll get a chance to throw the 33s on one more time and give it up for the big guy, but don't think that it's coming anytime soon or involving him actually playing in another National Hockey League game. But it was great to see him looking good and back out on the ice. Remo, before we get to the football stuff, baseball's just around the corner. I cannot wait for Goldeye season. The Fish have been making a whole bunch of moves. It was great chat with Greg Taggart, the new manager, a couple of weeks ago on this program. But we got some rule changes. First of all, the pitch clock is in effect in the Northern League, which is going to be amazing. Games will be much, much quicker. But plenty of rule changes coming into the majors. Why don't you roll these out for us?
Okay, here are the rule changes right now. Pitch clock, in an effort to increase the pace of play. 30-second pitch clock in between batters. I've been to a minor league game where they had it, and you didn't really notice it. I think this is probably needed. You can't have guys like getting out of the box, adjusting their gloves. Like, 30 seconds is more than enough time in between pitches. Okay, defensive shift limits. Team on defense must have at least 4 players on the infield with 2 infielders on either side of second base. You can't have like 4 guys, between first and second.
I like that, actually.
You like that one?
I'm not a big fan of the shift. I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, I know this is such a numbers game, and there was a lot of smart people that kind of came up with it. But I would prefer to watch more traditional baseball with the opportunity to hit and having the guys normally where these positions are within reason.
That's fair. That's fair. And this is the other one. Bigger bases. They're going to increase from 15 square inches to 18 square inches. Bigger base, you're not going to have guys stepping on each other's feet. These bases are so small, and like you think about how big some of these dudes are, like Aaron Judge, massive individual. I'm sure his foot takes up an entire base. So any more room, less collisions, I think is a pretty smart play. And
I don't think anyone's anti that. That seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean the player's bigger, and they are going to have a focus now on enforcing the balk rule. I guess some of these guys now have all these wacky deliveries with like stutters in them, and they're going to maybe take a closer eye on that. So I think there's.
It better not be coming from my guy Johnny Cueto. By the way, signed with no doubt. He signed with the Marlins, I think, and extra innings going forward is going to be starting with the guy on second base. Not in the playoffs though, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. And so they want to speed up the games, Huss, and you can't have these games going so late where they got to travel, and you're using up all your pitchers. So there's a number of rules. There's also some more on like using when you can use a position player as a pitcher, like only in the ninth inning. When you're down. So and then what? There's or pickoffs, Huss, after your third step off, you get a box, so you can't use as many step offs as going for pickoffs. A lot of changes here to speed things up and take away the things people don't like. We'll see how it works out.
No doubt about it. All right, let's get to some football. We've talked Jets and whatnot. Obviously, Chiefs Super Bowl win. Parade going on right now. Wish I could be there. Like well over 1 million people. I'm seeing some guys that I follow in KC. They're there saying that this could top the 2019 celebration after the first Mahomes-Andy Reid Super Bowl. But before we even got to the parade, Juju Smith-Schuster went Juju, trolling the Eagles cornerback that got the penalty with what was intended to be a sort of funny Valentine dig. And A.J. Brown came over the top rope, calling him TikTok boy and telling him to shut his mouth and know his role as a guy that maybe wasn't the massive impact player that he had been in the past in Pittsburgh and was for this Kansas City team. Obviously, everyone knows I love the Chiefs. I wish Juju would just shut the hell up. And I don't think this did himself any favors when it comes to getting another contract, because let's not forget, he was on a 1-year deal to see how he'd fit in there. He was fine. He caught, 5 passes in the second half of the Super Bowl, which was big. But if you look back over the last 6 games, I mean, it wasn't like they were leaning on Juju Smith-Schuster, and he was out for most of the AFC Championship game, too.
Yeah, here's the tweet from Juju. Happy, just unprovoked yesterday during the show. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And it's caption, I'll hold you when it matters most, and player of, what was the guy's name who did the hold? Bradbury? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just like unprovoked. Like you won. Like, why are you?
Like for a fan to do it, actually pretty funny. Have fun with it. But for a guy that was in the game that got on it, I mean, what's he trying to get? And there's a lot of people, I think, that lost. Maybe they didn't have a lot of respect from beforehand. Maybe the fact that he was pretty quiet and just did a good job of being part of a great team in Kansas City this year. But it's a bad look. It's low class. And as I say, I don't think there's a lot of people at one Arrowhead way that were too impressed with the way he handled that yesterday.
Yeah, like it's unprovoked. I don't think you need to do that. Anyways, A.J. Brown, here he is, goes, first off, congratulations. Y'all deserve it. And then he goes, this is lame. You was on the way out of the league before Mahomes resurrected your career on your 1-year deal. TikTok boy. He admitted he grabbed you, but don't act like you're like that or ever was. But congratulations again. Calling him TikTok boy was amazing. That was a great burn. And then you see in the replies, all the gifs of just like shocked faces.
A.J. Brown chose violence.
Yeah, sure, and then here's someone making a 9 Chiefs jersey with TikTok boy on the back because Juju likes doing TikTok dances. And
speaking of TikTok dances, of course, I know someone's going to give me a shot about Mahomes' brother Jackson. If you guys are familiar with Joey Molinaro, who does incredible impressions, there is about a 2-minute video of him putting together his impression of Patrick Mahomes going on Howard Stern. Molinaro's genius impressionist when it comes to sports. This is his opus. This is the best and funniest work he's ever done. We won't play it because there's a lot of swearing in it with it being a Howard Stern impersonation. But as long as you don't mind a little bit of blue language, go to Twitter. I tweeted it out yesterday, I believe. And thank us later. Remo, normally you'll see a good impression. You watch it. I think I've watched that 5 or 6 times. I mean, it is that funny and that good.
I've watched it a couple times. I frequently listen to Howard 100, so it was pretty much spot on how it would go, a theoretical interview. So I loved it. And yeah, Joe, he does great work on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Usually, Nick Saban, Colin Cowherd skits. So very well done, and I did enjoy that.
Oh, Reggie Dunlop should send a Valentine to Clark Hunt's daughter. Yes, Gracie Hunt. Big week for Gracie last week in Phoenix. Plenty of Instagram content for Gracie. She is former Miss Kansas, and now announced just before the Super Bowl is also going to be on the cover of Maxim in a big pictorial.
Maxim is still around.
Yeah, Maxim's still rolling.
It's not shut down?
Rolling. No, and it's still hotties around North America and the world. I think still aspire to get a Maxim spread. So. Yes, the daughter of owner Clark Hunt hitting Maxim, probably a lot of red in the red in it, and it's just as far as the game. I know.
Maxim, are people buying that still?
I mean, I don't know.
Is there a magazine rack? Remember, you used to go it was so awesome. The magazine rack at Sev or whatever.
Listen, that was Listen, if you're of a certain age, you were jumping on that Maxim, and really Maxim made a lot of women into like superstars because the profile of being like on the cover of Maxim was so huge. I mean, you can basically go down the list like the Megan Foxes of the world. I mean, there's a number of them that kind of shot to notoriety through Maxim and then. And I do think they still do the Maxim 100 every year.
I just googled the Hot 100. They did do it for. Yeah, I didn't know if you could still do the Hot 100.
Paige Spiranek, did she take number 1 this year?
I think she was. Yeah.
Speaking of influencers,
yeah, I think so. So she hosted the Hot 100 party too.
Well, there you go. There you go. It's a. But anyways, I could talk about former Maxim cover girls all day.
I sidetracked. Now the chat's like FHM was better.
Yeah,
than
FHM. Oh God. I will say this though, what a game! And I know you would have talked about it the last couple days, but and I know it gets burdensome, especially for people that hate the Chiefs or on other teams. And I've been talking about it for a long time. But Remo, you will remember one game into Patrick Mahomes' career. I said that this guy was going to be special. Hit a 40-1 MVP bet on him on his first year as a starter. Ran it back this year with 2 big bets, one on Mahomes MVP and an 11-1 Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, which came in. And the way they did it was absolutely spectacular. I mean, there are special athletes in all of our favorite sports that sometimes transcend their sports. And that's what Mahomes is doing right now. And Philly looked unbelievable in that first half. I mean, the way that they were running the football, it looked like Strevler on the Bombers from short yardage. Mahomes hurt going into halftime. Rihanna plays for 25 minutes, and then they come out. No penalties, no sacks, and no stops for the Philadelphia Eagles. It was not only a masterpiece for Mahomes, but also for Andy Reid. And it was amazing. The defensive coordinator of the Eagles, who got so thoroughly outcoached, got named yesterday as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. You wondered whether they might have had buyer's remorse watching that game transpire on Sunday. And obviously there was a lot made of that call. Not a great way to end the game. But, man, just an all-time performance by an all-time quarterback. And Andy Reid barged into the conversations of some of the best coaches of all time.
Yeah, that was definitely a classic. I think it was unfortunate, just the way that it ended. But you just look at the way the Chiefs dominated on offense, scoring on every possession. Scoring touchdowns, Huss, with the receivers being completely wide open, confusing the Eagles defense, marching down.
God, those two. I mean, that was a coaching clinic, is what that was in the second half.
Yeah. So I mean, the Chiefs definitely deserved it. And Mahomes, going into the game, I was talking with Hackster, like, Hassan Reddick, he's such a good pass rusher. This pass rush is going to give him trouble. And you kind of thought maybe it would, because just of the way it went with the Tampa Super Bowl. But I think you could see that they learned making all these quick throws. The offensive line stepped up. No sacks allowed to Mahomes, which was certainly key.
Oh, listen. The Chiefs' offensive line, took a lot of the talk about what the Eagles' defense did, I think, personally. And if you think back to the loss to the Buccaneers a couple years ago in the Super Bowl, I mean, they finished that game knowing we need to remake this entire offensive line, and they did. And the offensive line was maybe the biggest part of winning that game, other than the guy wearing number 15 and what Andy Reid did in the second half. They took that Philadelphia defense to the woodshed. And that had been the best defense all year long. And this is the first time that an MVP for the regular season had gone up against the number one defense in the Super Bowl and won. 3 times earlier, the defense had prevailed. But, man, the way they were able to run the ball, Isaiah Pacheco, Mahomes at a couple times when they really needed it, and the fact that Mahomes did what he did because the Eagles were not on him. I mean, that Buccaneer game, it was an all-time record since they started recording that stat. Mahomes had to run around 495 yards behind the line of scrimmage, essentially running for his life all night. And there was still some terrible drops in the end zone from a team that just didn't come together. But, man, it came together for them in Glendale on Sunday. And now, some people can say dynasty. Some people can say, well, let's see what happens. The bottom line is this 5-year period of Mahomes as a starting quarterback, the NFL has never seen anything like it. 5 straight 12-win seasons, 5 Pro Bowls, 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl championships, 3 AFC championships. I know there'll be people talking about Brady. Well, Brady did it. Brady essentially was on 2 dynasties. One at the beginning of his career, and then another one at the end, and then won that extra one. Now, who knows how long Mahomes is going to play? But, I mean, there's no one that started a career like Mahomes has even close. Like, Tom Brady had 3 Super Bowls in his first 14 years in the league. I'm pretty sure by the time we get to 14 years in the league, Mahomes is going to have another one. And who knows, it might be next year the way this team is set up going forward. But hell of a way to end a great NFL season, and even better to cash those tickets, which with my friends at CoolBet, which will bring us to the CoolBet odds for today. And by the way, just while you're thinking about, while we're talking about this, and Remo, let's see what you have to say about this. NFL futures right now are up for next year. The Chiefs are the favorite at 6-1. Buffalo right behind them at plus 650. Eagles and Niners at 8-1. Bengals at 10-1. Those are your clear top 5. 3 from the AFC, 2 from the NFC. And then the Cowboys at 16-1. Chargers 22. Dolphins 28. Ravens 30, Packers 33. Lots of talk about Aaron Rodgers maybe leaving. Detroit Lions 33. And then the New York Jets and Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Jags, Dusty brought this up today. Jags an interesting team. I'm not sure we'll see a number better than 35-1, considering the hype that'll be going in around Trevor Lawrence coming off that great season that he and his team had, coming from the worst team in the league 2 years in a row to being AFC South champs.
That seems really low, 35-1 for a team that was in the playoffs behind teams that weren't, like the Packers.
And in a terrible division. I mean, you can probably count them to win that division again next year, considering what they had last season.
Yeah, and they have a top overall pick and quarterback and Trevor Lawrence. So actually, that's low with Jacksonville. Now I don't know if they're going to win, but 35-1 just seems like good value.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Anyways, tonight in the National Hockey League, and if you want to get to today's lock shop, Dusty and I were back at it with picks for the Genesis Open. Tiger Woods is back. By the way, you can get Tiger Woods to make the cut at plus 147 over at CoolBet as well. So you can check that out for our hockey picks tonight. But we do have a bunch of games. Blackhawks, Leafs minus 556 on the money line. to win by 3 is still minus 118. That might be the biggest spread I think I've seen all year in a long time. Tampa, minus 251 fave in Zona against the Coyotes. Oilers, big home favorite, minus 231 against the Wings. I like Avalanche Wild dropping the puck at 8:30 tonight. This will be interesting. I like Avs on the road, actually, plus 115. It's gone down a little bit throughout the day. Buffalo in Anaheim to take on the Ducks. Ducks plus 180 home dogs. Buffalo puck line plus 116. And then the New York Rangers continuing their strong play of late. And Vancouver looking to come back from that embarrassment by the Detroit Red Wings a couple nights ago. Rangers minus 196. And the Vancouver Canucks are plus 165. If you haven't played a cool bet before and you want to get in on you're making your first deposit, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on that first deposit over at coolbet.com. Remo, what's going on tonight? What's on the docket?
Well, I actually don't know. Maybe working on some stuff for this. Always editing videos and doing whatnot. Watching hockey. I don't know. I actually don't have plans. I'm really excited. We have a treadmill in our house, and I had to get a warranty repaired. And like 2 months later, I finally got the part. So I'm like itching to put that in. I got to find time for that.
Bust a few miles on the treadmill and watch some hockey.
Exactly. I do want to say we were talking about the all-time leaders for Jets, Winnipeg history with 1.0 us, and NHL.com does make it easy to go, and you just have to go to the Coyotes history, search for defensemen, and look, here's the Coyotes. These are all the Coyotes franchise leaders for points by a defenseman here. Phil Housley.
Are there any guys that actually played for the Coyotes?
Yeah, number 10, Keith Yandel, 59 points in 2010. 11. And that's why I keep saying, for marketing purposes, like, what are we doing here? Arizona Coyotes, all their franchise leaders are from Winnipeg. Does anyone in Arizona care what happened there? Absolutely not. So, let them honor their own history.
Listen, what we're doing here is we're recognizing Phil Housley as the assist leader.
Yeah,
with 79 for defense.
He's got, here are the assist leaders. So, Morrissey, he had 45 yesterday in a season. Here's the assist leaders. Housley, 79 in 92, 93. Housley, 63, 91, 92. Babbage, 61 in 82, 83. Housley, 53 in 90, 91. And then Babbage, 49, 84, 85. Babbage, 49. So it keeps going. Fredrik Olsen's got a 47. So we'll see where Morrissey lands on there. Us, and then points,
I think Morrissey's a shoo-in to end up being second overall. I mean, just that 92-93 season was just magic. I mean, Solani scoring 76 goals, and it seemed like about 65 or 70% of them were assisted by Phil Housley, who had that monster season. That was magical.
Yeah, he'll be top 5. I mean, if you want to be number 2 in Winnipeg hockey history for assists, you need to get 63. We need 20 more and 30. I guess he was on, it'll be close. For points, I think he's got 54. I have it on another tab that I don't want to go to right now, but points. Housley is second too with 86 and 90. Can he get to 80? Can he get 30 more points? I think he can get. He'll get to top 5 in both, but how high will he get? So again,
I guess that's good call. I was thinking 56 already, but those are his points. So he's needing 18 to get number 2 or to tie Phil Housley at number 2. Just goes to show you. Now, we are in a bit of a different era. Goals not quite as easy to score on, but Phil was pretty special, man. And, of course, he's the guy that came for Dale Hawerchuk. So the legend of Hawerchuk kind of lived on even after he was traded, which disappointed many because Phil Housley had some monster seasons here with the Winnipeg Jets. All right.
Here, actually, one other thing I was going to send you. I know we gotta go. Did you see this Friesen report about the Winnipeg Ice? I DM'd it to you during the show. It came out during Paul Friesen saying the
live reaction.
Here, live reaction. I'll pull it up right now. And remember, we had the report from Mike Sawatsky around December that they got fined by the WHL, and he had to take it back. I think I'm trying to remember what happened. Anyways, so Paul Friesen writing now that the Ice could be on their last legs in Winnipeg. because they don't have an arena and there's currently no plans to get one. And people in the WHL are not happy because they said when the condition of coming here was they would build an arena. So
yeah, I mean, listen, that was the first thing they said when the team brought here. They're going to build a 4,500 seat rink, which would be perfect, a smaller venue. The city could absolutely use it. And listen, the pandemic happened. I did hear, I mean, again, take this for what it's worth, that, one of the big reasons why the things didn't go forward as planned right away was that, with the pandemic happening, you weren't sure whether in the future building laws were going to physically change. Like, how close could you have people together and all of that? Bottom line is they weren't supposed to be playing forever at Max Bell. They've got the lowest attendance in the entire Western Hockey League, which is a real shame because they have arguably the best team. I'm just seeing from Freezer's Bit, unofficial attendance figures show Winnipeg averaging 1,600 fans a game, the lowest mark in the WHL. And as he noted, the Winnipeg Warriors back in, I guess, the early 80s lasted 4 years, and we'll see what happens. That being said, bottom line is, if you want to get out and see some great junior hockey right now, get out and check out the Ice, because they are a juggernaut right now. They just pumped Edmonton 7-1, and we'll look forward to cannot wait for those playoff games, and hopefully the place can be packed. But this team is too good to be playing in front of such small crowds. And, it's unfortunate. I'm sure there's been a lot of challenges to Greg Fettis and Matt Cockle and what they've been dealing with, and they've certainly done an amazing job of putting a first-class product on the ice. But at the end of the day, the home is going to be a major, major issue for the team. Maybe get into this a little bit tomorrow on the program. We do have to go and get the podcast up. Thanks so much to Matt Dunstone, and congratulations again to him. We'll talk some more curling, hopefully get Jen Jones in the next little while. Scotty's beginning on Friday, and certainly Reed Carruthers coming on as well in the next few days. Murat Atesh, of course. Darren Bombing on CFL free agency. Of course, Michael Remus, great job hosting for the last few days, but great to be back. Going to go watch some highlights of the Super Bowl parade. Remo will get the pod up, and we'll be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Have a great night, everyone.
Oh, my God! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.